Room won't have it long. He left a call for 7 a.m.
Can you please look up this site?
See if we can figure out something.
Hi, welcome back. Our teacher, we changed times and the teacher forgot, so we didn't have dance class. Also on the intro, I knew that it was a bad idea. Oh, I've got a Mickey Mouse around my neck. I knew it was a bad idea to have like never-ending countdown. And then I showed Vaughn and he pointed it out. So I'm gonna try my best to find one that's 1 minute. I'm just not enjoying the 1 minute countdowns on Canva. And the reason I'm wanting 1 minute is because it gives me time to turn off the heart reaction thing and to make sure that everything's set in such a way that it's going to be like running nicely when I hit play, so that I'm not always starting as a scatterbrains. Okay, so because I ended before this motion, oh, now I've got that thing I added, that clock thing is like in the way of this. I just went back to the motion. We can watch it in 1.25 and then get back to live-ish. Ah!
You can come back at 2:10. I have a
Okay.
short list at 2 o'clock, but it should be done based on what I looked at, so. Yeah, be back at 2:05 just in case, but you probably will be waiting until 2:10.
I have the reference of what we were talking about earlier, if you'd like me to.
Yes, if you can copy it and send it back, or send it back. Thank you.
Your Honor, just for the record, I think we each made a transcript of the same thing. So
So you each have competing transcripts of, anybody that isn't talking can be seated. You can stand too, but you have competing transcripts of the interview?
yes,
Are the competing transcripts material to the issue that we were discussing?
I'm not sure, but I think that's fine. Obviously, if Your Honor wants to look at that, we could provide you with a copy of our corresponding transcript, but also we would like to be heard just as to the context of that information as it relates to this issue.
All right, I'll do all that and we'll get back on the.
Thank you.
2 o'clock, thank you.
All rise.
Oh. Okay, so we didn't miss anything. Let's see. Nope, we haven't missed anything in those motions. Also, hi everyone. Did I say hi? I don't remember. Sorry. I want to be a little behind, but not this far.
that this defendant paints the narrative that she wants others to believe as to what she said the victim had, or she felt the victim's issues were, or shortcomings were.
Well, it seems like to me that that would be the proper basis for your request,
Yes.
but not an agree to exclude it.
And we're not seeking per se for you to exclude it, we're just saying, in terms of what we would object about, it before is, a proper foundation to be laid as to how she.
I understood. There's not the same foundation requirements for cross-examination. So, the statement that was made across the sidewalk, I'm not going to them off the hook for this, was that I didn't have good faith basis for asking the question.
No, I don't.
No, that was.
I know, I am.
Yeah, you said it as well.
I am.
But that was a little bit more predictable in certain cases, because you didn't have access to the transcript for quite as long as the time. But when
I
I
didn't
said,
have the transcript.
exactly, that slight period, not at all. Whereas the Commonwealth had this transcript, well, I had the tapes that were the basis of the transcript for longer than I had. So the statement was made, when I said it was in the transcript, they looked shocked and they said they did not believe that it was. I do not believe that in order to do a cross-examination, that what the case law says that I need good faith basis, or I need to be able to source every single thing to a transcript. But in it,
I didn't suggest that, counsel,
Okay.
but I will say to you, when I said that the cycle bar, that, I think that that is something, we all judges, just like everybody else, have pet peeves about the rules of evidence. And one of my pet peeves is that particular rule of evidence. It's in section 611, take a look at it, take a look at the notes, it's B. It says there must be a reasonable and good faith basis for questions on cross-examination. And there's a lot of law that is quite interesting, actually, that's emanated out of that. Most of that law has been from the other side.
Right.
The prosecution cross-examining defendants and what the permissible scope of that is, but it applies equally to both sides. And when I ask you that, you should take no offense. It's my lack of knowledge of the case that don't take that, and I don't think you did. Hope you did. Take it personally. I'm going to equally say that to both sides of you all the time, because I don't know what it is. And you're right, it doesn't even have to be admissible. That's the good faith case. But there are some strictures, and sometimes, frankly, when I ask that question, they come over and they look at me like I have 10 heads, and there isn't, and they withdraw the question. So I'm just trying to lay down early in the trial sort of what my concerns are.
Right.
And
No,
don't take any offense to it.
I don't think any of us support position. I understand what it's based on. I do want to say that a prosecutor cross-examining a defendant does not need a statement. There may be larger areas in which there could be no good faith basis, as opposed to myself or a defense attorney who's had constant access to someone who has connection to a family and might know things through their client and a number of other things. I just point that out. I'm not trying to say anything about the court. I do, however, point out that the objection that was made by the Commonwealth, perhaps spurred by Your Honor, who came at it from a knowledge deficit, was that there was nothing that I could have pointed to that was the basis of that.
Just, if I could just very briefly respond, since it seems as though something was taken personally, and my apologies. My comment at sidebar, you've never heard me say, he does not have a good faith basis. Those words did not come out of my mouth. What I said was, I don't believe the transcript indicated 2008, 2009, or 2018 that he was doing both these things at the same time. And that is accurate.
I think we exhausted this issue.
I think so.
And, I'm going to move on from that issue. And honestly, the reason I called you the first time is I thought I heard 2009. I thought she'd be a child, a young child at that point, which you know. All right. I want to, well, I can hold that to the end of the day.
Your Honor, just while we have a moment, may we just come up to sidebar?
Yes.
Thank you.
That life support beep is awfully loud today. And crackle, crackle. Elevator music. Oh no, this is even worse than the last one. No, my brain can't. I would have to find the BPM and match it up perfectly. This is literal torture. Like if you watch the Secret Service thing, what is it? Who Dares Wins? That thing? They play that for torture. You probably have a bit of space to go forward, but I want to see if she's mouthing things again. That's the only thing.
Are we at C? C. D. Thank you so much.
For identification.
All right, all set?
reminder that you remain under oath. Thank you.
Court, all rise to re-entering. This court's now in session. Be seated, please.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. When we just finished talking, you had mentioned the fact that in 2018, your father had been prescribed Adderall.
Yes.
And he was using Adderall and drinking at the same time.
Yes.
Okay. That wasn't the only thing that he was prescribed at that time, right?
I don't recall.
Okay. Are you aware if after 2018 he was prescribed any medication?
Yes.
Okay. And at that time he was in counseling and he was in therapy?
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk to you a little bit about on January 28th about what was asked about the phone by the Commonwealth on direct examination. Do you remember they asked you those questions a minute ago? That at some point your mom asked you to go get a phone?
Yes.
That was right after you had been talking to 911, or while you were still talking to 911, right?
Yes.
And you had just announced, hadn't you, that the ambulance was on its way?
Yes.
And the police were on the way?
Yes.
And the person on the other end had said essentially the ambulance and the police were on the way?
Yes.
And so everybody, or at least your understanding at that time, was that you were about to leave the house?
Not leave the house. My understanding was they were coming. They were on the way to the house.
And that would have been the ambulance?
Yes.
And the ambulance you thought at that time was going to bring your father to the hospital?
Yes.
And if you were going to follow your father to the hospital, you guys would be leaving the house, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned on direct examination that you didn't see any injuries on your mom when you came downstairs.
Yes.
Is it fair to say that your prime focus at that point was just calling 911
Yes, I would.
and making sure your dad was okay?
Yes.
Did you have an opportunity to really do a thorough examination of your mother to determine if she had any injuries?
No.
Okay. You were mainly concerned with just making sure somebody was able to get to the house?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned on cross-examination once seeing some injuries on your father near his lip.
Yes.
And you think that that could have been as long as 2 years before your dad's passing?
Yes.
So just so we're clear, like 2 years would have been beginning of 2018. So it would have been after that, correct?
Yes.
Would it have been sometime in early 2019, do you think?
Yes.
Okay. And at that time, when you saw that bruise, was Katrina Angel's girlfriend living at the house at that time?
I'm not sure.
Okay. But that's the only time you remember seeing a bruise on your father's face,
Yes.
correct? And from 2018 all the way up until your father's passing, you were seeing your dad like practically every day, right?
Yes.
For several hours a day.
Yes.
Right. And that one incident that you mentioned was the only one you remember.
Yes.
Okay. Now, on direct examination, you had mentioned that you had a really great relationship with your dad.
Yeah.
What was your relationship like with your mom?
We were very close. We had so many similar, and when I did Zumba with her, so we just connected on a lot.
And other than Zumba, did you guys do other things together?
Yeah.
Yeah. You were really close with both your parents, right?
Yes, I was.
All right. Nothing further. Thank you.
Redirect. Thank you.
Hi again.
Hi.
When defense counsel asked you, Sophia, about when you were told about the affair, you had initially, and correct me if I'm wrong, stated that they both told you about the affair together. Is that right?
Yes.
So when defense counsel said a few times that it was your father telling you about the affair, it was both your parents together?
We were both together in the same room, but my dad said it.
He verbally talked about it?
Yes.
Okay. And fair to say that during the times that your dad was drinking, you were a fairly younger child, 12, 13, is that right?
Yeah.
Did you know, had you been around people who drank a lot?
No, not really.
And, you know, in using, let's say, the term alcoholic, did you know that terminology back then on your own based on some research you've done or books you'd read? Or
No, not as a kid.
fair to say that you learned a lot about what your dad was dealing with from your mother, right?
Not all, but yes, some.
So some, like what kinds of things would she say to you about him?
Like,
Actually, let me ask you a different question. So it's fair to say it was a combination of different factors, your own observations, and your mother was telling you things, correct?
yeah.
And when, prior to learning about the affair, your mother hadn't told you anything about your dad drinking too much, correct?
But we talked about it, but she didn't tell me fully.
But more, it became spoken about more often after you learned about the affair. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. And when defense counsel was asking you about how your dad would react or respond when your mother would be asking him questions, and that would kind of be how an argument started. You remember that line of questioning?
Yes.
And is it fair to say that when you indicated your father wouldn't remember things, that primarily had to do with dates of involved in the affair and details regarding the affair?
Yes.
Because certainly he had a full-time job at this time of his periodic lapses in memory, correct?
Yes.
He remembered to get up every morning, go to work on time, correct?
Yes.
As far as you know.
Yeah.
He drove a car, right? So he remembered the rules of the road, right?
Yes.
He also remembered to come home every night, correct?
Yes.
So his memory wasn't that bad generally, just primarily about the details of the affair that he kept being asked about by your mother, correct?
It was periods of times.
And with regard to AA, fair to say that if you know, it was your mom and you actually went to the first softball game that AA had, right?
Yes.
And your father wasn't even with you?
No.
And then thereafter, if you know, your mom went to all of the AA meetings with your dad?
Yes, she did.
In fact, during the same time period, is it fair to say your mom went with your dad pretty much everywhere except for work?
Yes.
She didn't let him out of her sight, correct?
I wouldn't say that, but yes.
Are you aware whether or not she had some control over his cell phone?
No, I was not aware.
Or his social media?
I don't recall that.
Fair to say your mom, during the time period after the affair, had a very difficult time coping with and accepting what your dad had done.
Yes.
And her personality changed in a lot of ways in terms of what she did or didn't do compared to before then, correct?
Correct.
She spent a lot of time in her room.
Yes.
She still taught Zumba though, right?
Yes.
Speaking of that, for anyone who doesn't know, and you indicated you did it with her, that involves 2 green sticks or 2 sticks, correct? That you're pounding on the ground, pounding in the air, right?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's pound. Sorry. Zumba, I apologize. You're using, it's full on dancing, right?
Yes.
Okay. And your mom actually had a Zumba, like kind of a little studio in the house?
Yes.
And in that room were weights, right? It was kind of her workout room?
Yes.
And she was in great shape, correct?
Yes.
fitness was important. It was kind of her livelihood, right?
Yeah.
Are we beyond the scope of cross?
You are.
Thanks, Blake.
Sustained. And defense counsel asked you many questions about your dad's drinking. I just want to be sure I understand. After the affair, for the next 2.5 years up until his death, fair to say you never saw him drink again, correct?
No.
And defense counsel asked you about a change in your father's job after 2019. Do you remember that? And that was because your mom made him stop working at one of the 2 places he was working at with his friends, correct?
No.
You're unaware of that, or you know something differently?
I'm unaware of that.
Okay. And defense counsel was asking you about your mother's panic attack immediately when she called your name on January 28th, 2021. And you were describing what it kind of looked like, her panic attack. You remember that line of questioning?
Yes.
And that she was difficult maybe to understand at times. Is that right?
Yes.
But you heard her clearly yell for you when you were upstairs, right?
Yes.
And then you heard her clearly say, call 911, correct?
Yes.
And then you also heard her clearly tell you to go upstairs and get her cell phone, right?
Yes.
None of that was unclear, right?
No.
Okay. And you described an incident involving Netflix and an upside down flag, and that making your father angry and upset. You remember that line of questioning?
Yes, I do.
Fair to say that was not anger at your mother, correct?
It was anger at me.
Right, because he felt you were disrespecting the flag, right?
Yes.
And he had served in the Army?
Yes.
Okay. You've never seen him be physically violent with anyone in your family, correct?
No.
And in terms of, do you know what the word instigated means? Or to instigate something?
Yes.
Who out of your parents would instigate most fights?
My mom.
And in terms of your father's purported alcohol issues, predating this by a couple of years, the events of January 28th, did you ever observe your father pass out behind the wheel of the car? Did you ever see him, did you ever come home from a friend's house and see your dad pass out on the floor surrounded by throw up?
No.
Did you ever see him fall down and hit his head because he was so drunk?
Not hit his head, but I've seen him fall down.
You saw him fall?
Yeah.
It was unsteady from drinking?
Yes.
How many, often?
No, I've seen it one
time? And again, for 2.5 years before his death, he no longer drank,
No.
correct? And you mentioned that your father was on Adderall, and that's for ADHD, correct? If you know.
I do not know.
And fair to say your mother was on a number of medications besides the medication you fed to her on the night your dad died, correct?
I don't recall how many she was on.
Do you know if she was on multiple medications?
I knew she was on multiple, but I didn't know how much.
One moment, please. One last question, I'm sorry. With regard to injuries and your ability to observe your mother on this particular night, once the police and first responders were there and you indicated your mom had an opportunity to calm down, is it fair to say that kind of calmed you down as well?
Yes.
And everything got a little bit calmer, right, in general?
Yes.
At that point, you had the ability to make observations of your mother, correct?
Yes.
you didn't see any injuries about her face or her body, correct?
No, I did not.
Nothing.
Recross.
You said a moment ago that when your father was brought out to the ambulance, you went out the side door, didn't you?
Yes.
And you were out at the side door when the police arrived as well.
Yes.
And so when your mother took the medication right after you gave it to him, you went outside.
Yes.
So you weren't around to do like an inspection of your mother at that time, right?
No, I was not.
So some questions were asked a moment ago about whether you have any training in addiction when you were 14 years old. And you said you didn't, right?
Yeah.
But you did have concerns about your dad's drinking on your own and independent of your mother, right?
Yes.
You would notice how many cases of beer would be stacked up again and again over in that room where he would drink, right?
Yes.
And you actually said to him when you were a little kid, I'll give up candy if you give up drinking, right?
Yes, I did.
And it was a topic of conversation within the household and outside the household, his drinking.
Yes.
And again, he said he was an alcoholic, right?
Yes, I did.
He would go to AA meetings. And you said a moment ago that your mother would go to them with him, right?
Yes.
But your dad also did commitments, right?
Yes.
Where he would go to other meetings and he would talk about his experience with alcoholism.
Yes.
And that wasn't a speech that was written by your mother, right?
Yes.
It was written by your dad, right?
Yes.
And your mother wouldn't go to all those commitment meetings, right?
Yes.
And of course, your father also went to a men's group, which for AA, and your mother didn't go to that, right?
Yes, correct.
Right. And of course, he actually did, as the DA said, remain sober.
Yes, he did.
And he appeared to struggle with that for a period of time, right?
Yes.
And he still appeared sober.
Yes.
So if this was some sort of a con about him having an alcohol problem, it was quite a long con. He was doing all the steps too.
Yeah, he was.
You can have it.
You said that after your father's affair, your mother was sad, right?
Yes.
And the DA the government just tried to suggest that she was in her room all the time, right?
Yes.
She was a Zumba instructor, correct?
Yes.
And in her room is where she did her Zumba classes, right?
Yes.
So she was running a business out of that room.
Yes.
So it wasn't all that strange that she was spending a lot of time in her room, right?
No.
This wasn't like someone who was so depressed they couldn't get out of bed and was wearing pajamas all the time, right?
No.
They were doing that aggressive cardio dancing, right?
Yes.
And she was running classes, right?
Yes.
And part of running classes is to make other people within the class feel motivated to do the class.
Yeah.
And she was able to do all those things, right?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned during redirect that your father had a job the whole time and seemed to be able to go to work, right?
Yes.
He seemed to be able to drive his car at that
Yes.
time, right? And that seems somewhat inconsistent with his statements that he had broad-based amnesia for a period of several months.
Yeah.
And wasn't that what the DA just pointed out?
Yes.
A big topic of conversation that was what the arguments were about?
Yes.
Because on one hand, your father would say, I don't remember anything for 8 months in 2018. And then later he'd say things that made it clear that he did have memories from 2018. Correct?
Yes.
And this would just be a constant question of what is it? Is this a neurological issue, right? Or is this just some sort of a lie, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't just your mother that was involved in this dialectic. It was the whole family, right?
Yes, it was.
Right. Now, you said on redirect that you never saw your father be violent with your mom, right?
Correct.
You never saw your mom be violent with your dad, did you?
No, I did not.
Right. That event with the bruise on his face, you weren't home when that happened.
No.
You came home and you saw it.
Yes.
And you didn't know if there was an argument before that. Maybe you heard about that from somebody, but you didn't know directly, right?
Yes.
Nothing further.
The witness may step down. The Commonwealth may call its next witness.
The Commonwealth would call Angel Richie.
Afternoon. You solemnly swear that the testimony in the evidence that you give to the court and the jury in the matter now comes from the Commonwealth and defendant are whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help God. Yes. Thank you.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Hi,
Could you please tell us your first and last name?
Angel and Richie,
And how old are you?
27,
Where do you live?
Marshfield,
And what's your address there in Marshfield?
679 Marine Street,
How long have you lived at that address?
17 years.
And who do you currently live at that address with?
I was Sophia. Me and her have a little situation right now, but we are living together partially. We just have a separation right now.
Okay.
The house.
So do you both physically still live in the same house?
We still have stuff at the house. Yeah, we both live in quarters at the house. Yeah.
Okay. And do you work?
Currently, no. I got lost my job February of this year.
Of this year? What
Yeah.
did you do before you lost your job?
Custodian work.
Where did you work as a custodian?
Hingham, public schools. Do you need a specific school or?
No.
Okay.
How long did you hold that job with the Hingham Public School?
Like 3 years, something like that.
Okay. Going back to January of 2021, did you live at 679 Marine Street?
Yeah. Yes.
So when I say live there, you have like a bedroom there. A lot of your belongings are there, correct?
Yes.
Would you necessarily stay there every night?
When I was working at the job, yes.
Okay. And so after January 28th of 2021, did you live somewhere else for a period of time other than Marshfield?
Yeah.
Where'd you live?
I was back and forth between houses between my girlfriend and I, or during the time my ex-girlfriend. That would have been like Whitman Hanson, and then my house, and then very rarely would be her like grandmother's or something like that.
Okay. And after specifically January 28th, when something happened at your house, did you go and live with another family member for a couple months?
My grandfather's.
And then eventually you were able to move back to Marine Street.
Yeah.
And where was your bedroom in the Marine Street house?
Basement.
And prior to January 28th of 2021, who else lived in the house at Marine Street?
So prior, so beforehand?
Yes.
Me, my sister, dad, and mom.
Okay. And if it's okay, I want to talk about those people that you just mentioned,
Okay.
your sister, your mom, and your dad. Who's your mom? What's her name?
Christine, Richie's last Sanchez.
And do you see her in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Can you just tell us something that she's wearing, like a color of a piece of clothing she's wearing?
Blazer. Beige blazer.
May the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant?
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
That record will so reflect.
In January of 2021, did your mom work?
I believe so. It would have been online Zumba, I believe.
Okay.
Um,
And other than kind of doing Zumba, did you know her to have any other jobs outside the house, or was she primarily kind of at home?
most part at home.
Did you know if she was engaged in any classes during that time period?
School, I believe so. Yeah.
And would that be college or high school?
Yes. College.
And do you know what she was studying at that time?
Psychology would have been would be my best guess.
And you also mentioned that during that time period, your father was living in the home.
Yeah.
Who was your father?
Michael Ricci. Michael Joseph Ricci.
And is that your biological father?
No,
When did you come to know Michael?
my whole life.
Your whole life?
Yeah.
And at some point, did he become your father legally?
2004.
And so in 2004, did Michael legally adopt you?
Yes.
And is that when you took the Richie name?
Yes.
And so what did you call him? What did you call
I've
Michael?
always called him Dad.
Always Dad?
Yeah.
And did you know what Michael did for a living?
Firefighter. And then part-time at the fire sprinkler company stuff. So whatever that entitles.
Okay. And did he work with a particular person that you and your family knew at the fire sprinkler company?
One of them, Mark McDonald, would have been his higher up.
Okay. Is that somebody that you knew as a family friend?
Yeah, we would have referred him as uncle through my father. Yeah.
And your father passed away, correct?
Yeah.
And when was that he passed away?
January either 27th or 28th. 21.
Do you know how old he was when he passed away?
'57. I can't remember.
You also mentioned at that time in January of 2021, your sister was living in the home, right? What's your sister's name?
Sophia.
And how old is she?
20.
And do you have any other siblings?
Michael. Little Michael.
Little Michael. And so fair to say he's a junior.
Yeah.
And is that what you and the family call him, as Little Michael?
Yeah.
Now, in January of 2021, was Michael Jr. living in the home on Marine Street?
That month?
Yes.
No.
Do you know when Michael stopped living at the house on Marine Street, when he moved out?
I can't give you the exact date, but I can say prior, before, like there was at least 2 years before my father's passing.
Okay, so 2 years before 2021, you think
Something like
he
that.
moved out?
Yeah.
And at the time in January of 2021, did Michael still have a room at the Marine Street house with like where his belongings would be, or he could sleep if he stayed?
No. My parents were working things out with him to try to like grab what he needs when he left. And then the rest was just kind of like, it's whatever.
Did he have a bedroom there growing up?
Yeah. So he had it growing up, but my mom eventually turned it into like her own like personal workout zone once he moved out officially.
Okay. Now, can you tell us a little bit about your parents' relationship back in 2018? What was their relationship like?
Exactly 2018 or?
Around that time period. Well, maybe I can ask you a different question if that's...
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
like I would need like a...
Sure. So growing up, did your parents appear to have a good relationship in your eyes as a child?
Most part, yeah.
At some point as you got older and became an adult, did you see their relationship change?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously, yeah.
Was there any particular event that you can recall in your parents' marriage where you started to see that change?
The affair.
Okay, and when you say the affair, what do you mean?
My father, or my mom finding out that my father cheated on her.
And did you learn that from both your mother and your father, that had been what happened?
Just through arguments and stuff, yeah.
And so when your mother learned about the affair, did you notice changes in her demeanor on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
What kinds of things did you notice changed?
Secluded. Like angry, I guess, like just the situation she was in, and confused too at the same time.
Okay. So would you hear her yell a lot more than you had heard her yell in the past?
Yeah, I mean, those past 3 years to his final day, was like abnormal as it could come, like, the fights were just ongoing, so that wasn't normal having that many fights. And then on top of it, that long of a period too of time, fights are going on, that wasn't normal at all.
Okay. And would you be around hearing and seeing these fights?
Yeah, without even me like having a point. Like if I was in the basement, there was no getting away from it.
So
I was just, I could hear the muffles and stuff and loudness, and it's just, yeah.
Okay. And would you hear both your mom and your dad's voices during those arguments?
Yeah.
Would there be any one voice that you'd hear more than the other in those arguments?
Objection, Your Honor.
He can answer it if he knows.
I can't necessarily say because there'd be times where one would overtake the other, and so it's.
Okay. Anything else that you observed about the changes in your mom's demeanor or how she would behave around the house after she learned of the affair?
I think she just wanted the truth. Like that, she was just persistent. She was persistent about getting the truth.
Okay. What about the house itself? Prior to her learning of the affair, what was the kind of state of your house? Was it always neat and tidy, or?
Objection, Your Honor.
Basis,
Relevance.
overall.
So was the house kind of neat and tidy before?
It got to a point where like it seemed like my father was picking up the slack.
So would you see your dad kind of pick everything up?
Right. Well, so she would do what she could, but then like the whole house was affected, like in depression wise and everything. So like it's kind of hard for a lot of us to do stuff. So when he come back from work or whatever, he do what he can.
Now, kind of jumping forward for a moment to the weeks prior to your dad's death, did you notice changes in his demeanor at that time?
Yeah. Thank you.
What did you notice about your dad's demeanor?
He was the same way kind of too, but like he was isolated before all the arguments and stuff. But it kind of seemed like he was trying to really either deal with what was going on or try to fix it. I saw like a lot of separation going on during the time, but then when they were together, it was either like very rarely it would have been like towards the end would have been the bonding experience was very like limited over the fighting, if that makes sense. So like the arguments would just overtakes what the good memory would have been if the argument wasn't in place, if that makes sense.
And is that something you observed between your parents?
Yeah.
Now, how about your relationship with your dad? Did you see some changes with your relationship with your dad in the few weeks?
Until he got sober.
What do you mean until he got sober?
Once he started getting sober is when I was able to like. My whole life I had a fear of my dad. So.
And did that change when he got sober? Is that a yes? You just have to answer out loud.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. And so did you find yourself becoming closer with him at that time when he was sober?
Yeah, we were talking more.
Now, in the weeks prior to his death, did you still hear and see fighting in the household?
Following up?
Yeah, leading up
yeah,
to.
yeah.
And did you see kind of your father either after a fight happened or kind of in the midst of one, what he would do during those fights?
Smoke.
And where would he do that?
Side door. So if there's only 2 doors we enter from the house, front door, side door.
Okay, but would it be inside or outside the house?
Outside.
And so where would your mom be when he would be outside smoking a cigarette?
If she wasn't out there with him, in the house somewhere. I mean, mostly in her room, just trying to stay away from it, you know?
When you would hear, excuse me, the fighting between your mom and dad, could you hear what they were fighting about?
I mean, like when I would have to, like at just like a passing ear, and it would just be like the same record, like same broken record type of situation. Just a whole lot of just trying to figure things out. It's what it sounded like, you know.
And when you say trying to figure things out, was there any particular thing that your parents
The
were trying to
affair.
figure?
The affair.
You mentioned your dad getting sober. Do you remember when that happened, that he stopped drinking?
I know he had his 1-year chip, I believe. Possibly 2 years. I'm not sure.
Okay. When he would drink, what would he drink?
I mean, depends, but majority probably would be Bud Light.
And what were your observations of him when he would be drinking?
They don't want to be messed with.
Okay. So does that mean he would be by himself?
Majority,
Drinking?
yeah, majority of times, yeah.
Okay. And would he do it in the house or someplace else?
Inside the house, and if he had to go outside, there'd be some stash somewhere for him to drink on. So,
Did you see a change in his interaction with the family when he became sober?
yeah. He was like a lot more open, it felt like, or seemed like. But like, it seemed like his anger wasn't as bad as before.
At any point, Angel, did you see these arguments with your mom and dad, or hear the arguments with your mom and dad become more than just a verbal yelling back and forth?
Like through any of them, or just like, what do you?
Well, from the period of time from 2018, after your family learned about the affair, till up until the time of his death in January of 2021, did you ever see anything physical between the two of them?
Restate my objection, Your Honor.
Your objection for the record.
Can I still answer?
Yeah, just
Okay,
a yes
okay.
or no.
Could you repeat the question?
Between 2018, after the family was aware of the affair, up until January of 2021, when your father passed away, did you see any physical interactions between the two of them?
I don't think so. Not in that time period. Maybe beforehand, but.
If we may approach sidebar briefly.
Yes. So jurors, from time to time, I will give you mid-trial instructions, and this is the first time that I'm doing that. Let's see if I can get rid of this. I'll wait and do that one. Later day. You are about to hear evidence concerning certain encounters that are alleged to have occurred involving the defendant. It may include involving the defendant in her home, and that this witness, I believe, observed before the incidents, which are the subject of the allegations in this case. This evidence is introduced to show a nature of the relationship between the defendant and the complaining witness, not the complaining witness, but here the victim. And insofar as it might bear on the issue of possible motive and the defendant's intent in this case. Like all evidence, it's up to you to decide whether you believe it or you do not, and to decide what weight that evidence should be given. This evidence is not introduced to show that the defendant had a bad character or a propensity to commit crimes, violent acts. You may not consider the evidence for those purposes. The defendant is not charged with committing any crimes other than the charges contained in the 2 indictments that I told you about earlier in the day. You may not consider this conduct as a substitution for proof that the defendant committed the crimes charged, nor may you consider it as proof that the defendant has a criminal propensity or a bad character. You may consider such evidence solely on the limited issue of the defendant's state of mind, motive, and intent with respect to the indictments in this case. You may not consider this evidence for any other purpose. Specifically, you may not use it to conclude that if the defendant committed these other acts, that she was more likely to have committed the crimes charged in the indictment. You may proceed.
Thank you. Angel, do you recall any particular incidents or arguments between your mom and dad where there was a concern about a weapon that was being used or that was furnished at some point?
Towards each other? Or
Well, just in terms of an argument ensuing and a weapon or an instrument.
There was, I mean, the quote that gets thrown around with me stopping my mother from poking herself with a knife.
So if I can just kind of maybe ask you a little bit more about that incident, but so we're talking about the same incident. Do you know about when that incident happened that you observed your mom with a knife?
Yeah. Do you want me to elaborate? Or
If you can recall about when that occurred.
I came home from work. I can't remember if I got called out early or if it was just right when I got out. My brother got in a fight with my parents, I guess. I came home early, or like I said, right on time or something. But came home, went upstairs. They're in their room. Things are broken. I asked what's going on. It was, once again, the affair was the situation of, well, what got brought up to me. And then I shared my 2 cents, like, excuse my...
Can we be a little bit careful here?
Yes, can we have a new question? The question that the witness is now answering has not been answered. Why don't we go back to when?
Well, I was leading up to the when.
There's no question before you, sir, right now, Madam Prosecutor.
Okay.
When?
Let me just ask a few more questions, okay, and maybe a little bit of a different way. As far as the time frame, what time of year this was, or in what year? Do you
I
remember
don't
when
know.
that was?
No.
Okay. And you indicated that you came home and Michael was in the home.
Which one?
Michael Jr., I'm sorry. Little Michael.
Wasn't at the home. No.
Okay, so when you came home, he wasn't at the home?
No.
Who was at the home when you came home?
My dad and father, dad and mom.
And were they arguing at that time?
It seemed like, I mean, things were broken, and I walk in the room and it's just just like deer caught in headlights type of situation. But they were just face to face to each other, and then I walk in the room and eyes on me. And then I ask what happened.
And you made observations of the room or the area or the house when you came home, right? Where you saw the broken mirror?
Like, yeah.
Okay. And so what happened next when you saw your parents in the room and kind of things broken?
Conversation goes south.
Who's having the conversation? You and your parents?
Yeah, like all three of us.
Okay. And so without saying what the conversation was, what happened next as far as what people did?
So I noticed my mom got like kind of hysterical in a way, and I worried. And during the time too, she was going through her situation with I'm gonna call it the affairist, or the person who he did the affair with.
Okay.
So my concern was stop her before she does something like that again, right? So she goes downstairs, like hysterical. I worry, follow her. Next thing I know, she grabs the kitchen knife next to the sink and Japanese like style, like about to plunge herself with it. And
just sorry to stop you, but for purposes of the record, because you're gesturing, and we're recording and creating a record of everything. When you say Japanese style, and you kind of held, but as far as what you were gesturing, she did. You had your hands together and you were gesturing towards your stomach. Did she have something in her hands at that time?
Okay. Like a steak knife, like the ones you'd cut like an onion with or something, you know, like those.
Sorry.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
thank you.
All right. Yeah, the ones can I draw it out? I mean,
Well, is it like a knife you cut a steak with, or a knife with a bigger blade?
bigger blade.
Okay.
Not a butcher knife, but big blade.
Okay. And so when you saw her do this with the knife to herself, where was your dad?
Pretty much following me, like as
In the kitchen as well?
after I called him in. Yeah.
And so what did you and your father do when you saw your mom make that gesture?
I grabbed the knife, stopping her from hurting herself, and then I called my dad over to help me, screaming like.
Were the two of you able to get the knife away?
Yeah.
And what was your mom's demeanor during that time period? How was she behaving?
Frantic.
And what was your dad's demeanor? What was he doing?
Just trying to do what he did every day, just deal with it. I mean.
And just to kind of circle back to when this might have happened, do you remember if Michael Jr., little Michael, was living in the house at that time, or is it some point after he moved out where this incident happened?
I don't remember that.
Do you remember, so you mentioned a girlfriend a little while ago, or an ex-girlfriend. What's your ex-girlfriend's name?
Katrina.
And did Katrina live with your family for a period of time during the time period we're talking about?
Yeah.
Was Katrina living in the home at the time that this incident happened?
That's the trouble I have remembering if we were at her house during the time, or if we're at my house during the time. That's the only issue I have with all this going on.
But would she often stay with you?
She would, yeah. If we were going to go anywhere, it would have been either there at her house or my house. But yeah, she would.
Okay. And now I'd just like to kind of go back to January 28th of 2021. Okay. Were you at home all day that day, or were you doing something else?
Work.
Do you remember what hours you were working around that time period?
Through references, I believe it was 2 to 10 or 2:30 to 10.
And fair to say, in your job as a custodian at that time period, sometimes your schedule varies
Yes.
So sometimes would you work the day shift,
Yeah.
more like
So
a 9 to 5?
yeah. So depending on, so when Sophia was going through the DCF stage and stuff like that, I was trying to change my work schedule around. The day before my father passed, I got the permanent position, taking the next retire custodian that was leaving the school. And then the day after he passes, and then
So when you took that more permanent position,
yep,
what did your hours change?
yeah,
What were your hours
beforehand or after?
Around that time period? What were they?
So that's like there wasn't. I was the sanitizing group after starting at first. It was during the COVID. So I think they would bring me in like super early in the morning, or at least after like the first period of class or whatever of their school schedule. And then that would go till like 2 or something. And then I got the chance to fill in one of the substitute custodians they had. And then that was the leading point to me getting the permanent. But that substitute hours was like till 5 or something like that.
Okay. So on January 28th, 2021, the day that your dad passed, were you home when the incident occurred?
No.
Where were you?
Work.
And at some point while you were at work, did you get a call?
Yes.
Who called you?
My mom.
And what did she tell you when she called you? If you can.
Actually, I think I missed the call, and I got the text message. So all I remember, I woke up because I was taking my break. Woke up to the text message, like you had the ding, and then I'm not sure if it was a missed call that was right before, or if I got called after, and then later on that night too, I also got a phone call at the police station, I think, or something like that.
Okay. As far as the text goes, during that time period in January 2021, you got a text, so you obviously had a cell phone, right? Do you know what your number was then, or your phone number?
781-588-1637.
Is that the same number you use today, or?
No.
Okay. In your phone, your cell phone, did you have a contact saved for your mom?
Would have been like Mama Bear or something like that.
Okay. And so when you received that text on that day, were you able to confirm that it was from your mom based on the contact?
Yeah, I mean, like she said, Dad's hurt. So.
Okay. Now, as far as the text communication with your mom that particular night, was that the only text you got from her?
No, I think there were a few more.
And from the text message, what did you learn from your mom?
He's hurt, or my father's hurt. My sister's getting taken away somewhere, and I need to go there.
Go where?
The hospital.
And so when you learned that you had to go to the hospital, what did you do?
When I got to the hospital?
Well, when you learned from the text that your dad was hurt,
yeah.
What did you do at work?
Ran inside because I'm just like, what the hell? Like, I didn't know what the hell to do, to leave or just stay. So I talked to my supervisor, and so I got to go to the hospital. My father's in the hospital, and he just didn't even question it and just said go. And then I went into action to go see him.
And so which hospital did you end up going to?
Weymouth, South Shore.
When you got to the hospital, was anyone else in your family there?
I think Michael showed up after. Little Michael.
Was Sophia, did you see Sophia at the hospital?
believe so. I saw Sophia when I believe we had family members around us too, and Michael was around there too when we had to break it down that our father passed away.
And were you able to see your father before he passed away?
Before, yes.
Was he responsive? Was he able to talk to you?
Oh, you mean like at the hospital?
Yes.
Oh, no. I wasn't able to see anything until the open casket.
On that night, did you talk to your mom again after going to the hospital?
Yes, that would have been at the police station.
Did she tell you anything about what happened that night with your dad? Other than what you learned in the text?
I can't remember that far. I mean, that was a crazy night too on top of it also, like, and then they were questioning me about stuff. So I mean, I don't know.
Now, as far as your phone went on that particular or around that night, do you remember talking to police about the text message that you told us about you got from your mom?
You want to repeat that for me one more time? Sorry.
Yes, let me reword the whole question.
Yeah.
On that particular night, do you remember talking to the police about the text message that you got from your mom earlier? That you to the hospital?
They had me and Michael sign a waiver for them to check messages between the parent or us and our parents or whatever.
Okay. And so you're aware the police were able to go into your phone and find the message you're referring to, correct?
I believe so, yeah. Yeah, they said it was only to...
It's okay.
Yeah.
And I'll ask you another
pertains
question,
to it.
okay?
Yeah.
May I approach the witness?
Yes.
I'm just going to show you 2 pages. If you could just take a look at what's contained on those.
Okay.
Is that a fair and accurate representation of the text exchanges between you and your mom that night of January 28th, 2021?
Yes, that's it. So, 20. Yeah.
Thank you. I would move to admit this as the next exhibit, please.
Is there objection?
See the second page. You need this one too.
Like these two.
These last two.
I'm guessing we have 4.
Yes. The whole exchange.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Be marked and admitted as Exhibit 4, the text, 2 pages of text messages. Counsel, I'll tell you that the last trial we had the same problem, so you may want to go to the Elmo.
This is the Elmo. But if I approach the witness and
Yes, you may.
the message.
I thought you were trying to do it from your computer, sorry.
No.
We didn't have that problem, we had another technology problem then.
May I approach the witness again and ask him to just read the first message?
You may.
Thank you. All right, Rachel, if you could just again look at Exhibit 4 and read the first blue bubble.
This one?
Yes.
Okay. Angel, Dad's in the hospital at South Shore. Sophia's in the way there. I'm sorry, please go there. They won't tell if he's okay. He wasn't breathing.
Thank you. And that's the message you remember getting from your mom when you were at work that night, right?
Yeah.
One moment, please. Sorry, Angel, just to go back for 1 second to something that you previously testified to. When we were talking about kind of changes in the house and keeping the house neat and tidy, I think you described that your dad picked up the slack.
Yeah, when he would come home, yeah,
So what do you mean when you say pick up the slack? What did you see him do?
straight to work, either cooking or cleaning something out.
And was he kind of that primary person who made sure you guys all had a good meal, did a lot of the cooking?
Just about, yeah. If I couldn't do it myself, then he'd be that person. Yeah.
And did you always know him to kind of keep things neat and tidy himself?
Yeah. I don't know if he got diagnosed by it, but like people would like say his actions were like OCD wise. You know what I mean?
Did you know him to have prior military service before you kind of came into the family?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross.
Thank you. I want to start by talking a little bit about, well, let me start by saying good afternoon, Angel. How are you?
Good afternoon. Doing good.
Good to see you. I want to start by talking about the event that you mentioned a moment ago about your mother trying to poke herself. I think
Yes.
that's the way you described it. Now, you said that on that particular day, you don't remember exactly what day it was,
Right.
but you do remember coming home from work all of a sudden or having to come home from work, right?
Yeah.
And the reason you came home from work was because your brother and your parents had had a fight, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
And the reason why your brother wasn't home when you got home was because he went to the hospital, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Right. This was the same exact day that he had broken his hand by punching the wall. Your brother Michael, little Michael.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. So this, if I told you that it was June 6th of 2019, would that sound correct to you? Thereabouts?
Nice sunny leaves out. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Right. So by the time you get to the house, Michael's already gone. He's at the hospital, right?
Yeah.
You walk upstairs and your parents are in the bedroom, right?
Yeah.
You don't actually see them fighting, right?
No.
You just heard about this because of the big blowout with Michael, little Michael, right?
Yeah.
And this would have been the last night that Michael Jr. stayed at the 679 Moraine Street home, right? He left after he broke his hand, right? He started living with your grandfather?
I can't confirm if it was his so if it wasn't the last day, it was one of the very last days.
So if I told you it was his last day, that wouldn't surprise you.
Yeah.
Right. And so you walk in, and by the time you get there, although they're like deer in headlights, as you describe them, they're not fighting when you get home, right?
No, not that I see. No.
When you go in, they're in their bedroom, right? There's a bunch of broken glass on the floor.
Yeah.
Right. And your father is sort of like trying to comfort your mother, right?
Yeah. I mean,
aren't they both sitting on the ground?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he's rubbing her back.
I would say so. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And then you come in, of course, and you've heard this really crazy story from Michael Jr., right? About a fight.
It was either from him or it was from my girlfriend or ex-girlfriend during the time.
Okay. When you get home, Katrina's not at the house when you get home, right?
No.
Right. So you come home, you go upstairs, and basically you bring a certain amount of frustration to that, and it's understandable, but you did, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of sets the ball again in motion of the emotions.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
She starts getting emotional, right?
Yeah.
She starts crying, right? and she's hyperventilating and she's very, very upset.
Yeah, and she tries to remove herself from the situation.
And so she walks away to get out, and your dad kind of is trying to give her some space and is a little bit behind her, but you're concerned, right?
Yeah, I was kind of like the middle ground for that situation.
And so you follow her downstairs,
Yeah,
and it's there that she grabs a knife, right?
in the kitchen. Yeah,
And she holds it against her stomach
yeah,
as if she's about to plunge it into her own guts.
yeah.
That's what you mean when you say the Japanese style, like harikari kind of thing. Okay. Now, want to talk about, I know I'm switching gears all over the place, and I apologize for this, but you mentioned that your father had a drinking problem, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you never had any doubts in your mind that your father had a drinking problem. You saw it firsthand, right?
Yeah.
And he was a heavy drinker.
Yeah, he would need at least an 18 pack when he come home or something when he was drinking.
And so even before he quit, it had occurred to you that your father was a pretty heavy drinker and he might have a problem, right?
Yeah.
And you also said there were some issues with regard to his anger during that period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your father claimed that he was an alcoholic. He said, I'm an alcoholic, right?
When he would talk to us about like if there was arguments and stuff like that going on.
He self-identified as an alcoholic and went to AA. Right?
Yeah, I was going to just say to the AA meetings. And I'm pretty sure he had like a speech or two at those meetings too. So
I want to talk about that. Those are those commitments, right? That people in AA do where they go out and speak about their experience.
yeah, so they can spread their like good energy, I guess, if you would say, to others to kind of motivate them to keep going and stuff like that.
So the idea is that an alcoholic who has gotten sober will go talk to another group of alcoholics and tell them about his struggle, right?
Yeah, to refresh that motivation for them.
And maybe tell them that they can do it too.
Yeah.
And that was a speech that your father himself wrote, right?
I believe so, yes.
It wasn't something that your mother like put words in his mouth. Or
Not that I would know, no.
And at that time, your mother would sometimes go to AA meetings with him, right?
Yes.
She didn't go to all of his AA meetings with him, did she?
That could be a possibility. I'm not sure.
Okay. But your father also did AA men's groups as well?
Like separate from the AA group itself?
Right.
I wouldn't know about that.
Okay. Your father did sober softball?
Yes.
And he participated in it?
Yes.
And he never suggested to you or to anybody that you ever saw that he wasn't happy about doing it?
No, I mean, no, because their AA buddies would have been that softball group too, you know? So, I mean.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. You mentioned the AA buddies.
Yeah.
Were those AA buddies, I mean, when somebody gets sober, oftentimes, before they get sober, they're friends. Was this the way it was with your father? That all of his friends were people that drank?
So the people he was surrounding himself with when he was getting sober weren't the same friends that he was drinking with.
Right. Before he got sober, though, those guys were largely drinking people.
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting for one second that all of those people had drinking problems, but they were people in which
they weren't helping in a way. So.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. So in other words, he had a relationship with them that was sort of built around the social aspects of drinking, right?
Yes.
And when he decided that he was going to get sober, he realized, and he would say this, wouldn't he? That he needed a new group of friends that didn't have that as a major part of their social activities, right?
Yeah, because it's kind of like a smoker is trying to stop smoking. It's like if you see someone smoke, it's going to make you want to smoke. So like if you see someone drink, you're going to want to drink.
Right.
And I think he would try to do like the water thing, but like, I don't know if, I think that was just too much pressure to even try to do.
Yeah.
Be around all that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Can I ask you this? He used to work for this guy named Mac, who was sort of like almost like a family member of yours, right?
Yeah.
Guy you grew up with?
Yeah, he grew up. I'm not sure exactly where they.
Maybe Hyde Park?
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
And they knew each other for so long that you guys sort of referred to him as an uncle?
Yeah.
And your dad worked for him as well, is right?
Yes, for some time, yeah.
Yeah. And wasn't it sort of a ritual of the guys that worked for that MCC company, the company that Mac worked for, that after work they'd all go across the street,
yes,
get a couple of beers?
Yes.
And that was a big part of the social group, right?
Yeah, I mean, wind down before you go home and, you know.
Have an 18-pack.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the fact that he would be going to work with these guys and the ritual would be after work every time we go across the bar for a quick one. Do you think that was a temptation to him, or would he express that that was a temptation for him?
I would assume so from him cutting off all those people. So.
Okay. You described the neat and tidy bit that the house wasn't as neat and tidy after 2018. Is that what you said, or did I misunderstand you?
At some point, it got chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
There was some ordinance, but then there was just like we started taking more stuff than we should have. You know what I mean? Like objects like chairs and stuff like that, just big objects that just took up space, and then that stuff would get piled on with other stuff that we'd bring into the house, you know? So.
Oh, in other words, just in general,
like hoarding in a way.
You guys would accumulate things, somehow, and not throw away the old things, and they would accumulate.
Yes,
I see. And was that attributable to your mother, or was that just generally true of the family?
I'd say like the whole family in a way.
Okay,
we were all kind of like the same, but I don't know, like. I would say the whole family.
Thank you
very much.
So, also, as you mentioned a moment ago, your brother had left the house in June of 2019.
Yes, or before that, but around there.
Yeah. And when he left, he didn't take all of his belongings with him. He moved out and he took some belongings, but he left a lot of his belongings there, right?
He took the belongings that he saw fit and then said, in shorter words, that he doesn't need the rest.
Right. But for a while, wasn't that a real question? And wasn't your family sort of holding on to his old property for him to come pick up?
Yeah.
And that stuff from his room that had been moved out when your mother made it into a Zumba room, that was all downstairs in that living room area, wasn't it?
For him to grab, if he ever did. And then eventually just went his way and then just didn't.
And some of those items still remained in that living room. They just never
in the same box. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And so also your girlfriend, Katrina, who would sometimes stay there, she wouldn't always be at your house. She would be kind of in and out depending on what was going on in your relationship.
I would say so. Yeah.
And so when she would leave, also her stuff would get put in that living room area, wouldn't it? For her to pick up.
I wouldn't say she would leave the same room with the same area with the same idea, but it wouldn't be left there for her to just pick up it. She'd be gone with it.
In December of 2020, she leaves 679 Marine Street permanently, correct?
September 2020?
Yes. About a month before your father's death?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. And when she left, she had a bunch of her boxes, didn't she, over in the living room?
In my room.
Which then got moved to the living room area?
I believe so, yes.
Yes. So the pictures of the living room, dining room area, that's, from January 28th, 2021, all that stuff. Some of it's Michael's and some of it's Katrina's, right? Waiting for them to pick it up.
So the only problem I have is that I don't remember boxes being there for Katrina because a lot of the stuff was mixed in with mine in my room still. So like, I don't know if that's even true or not, but Michael's sake, those boxes were always there for him to grab and he just never did.
And then there was also the general problem with the family accumulating stuff over the years and not getting rid of the old stuff.
And then those boxes being there and then kind of like a furball is picking up stuff as it goes.
In other words, at a certain point, it gets so big, it's hard to handle, right?
Yeah.
And when your dad would get home from work, he wouldn't try to clean up that living room area because there was just such a big job. He would do things like make dinner, right?
Yeah.
And by this point, when he was making dinner, you're
dishes and he was doing a lot of.
How old are you at this point? You're in your 20s, right?
Yeah.
Michael Jr. is in his 20s, right?
Yeah.
And Sophia at this point is 16 years old, right?
Yeah.
So all the kids are kind of grown, right?
Yeah.
Are they? You guys are probably also making your own food, aren't you? During this time,
yeah,
washing your own dishes, aren't you?
No. So my dad My dad liked cooking, so that was his thing. I think it got to a point where he just said, leave the dishes for us, like, because we were just piling it up beforehand anyways.
So your dad would tell you, you kids, don't worry about doing the dishes out.
It was after frustration too. And then he kind of, I think he found a love for it for some reason. I don't know. But dishes, food, and if you didn't do the dishes first, then it'd be the dishes after the food. And then clothes. He's a big stickler about the folds and all that. So,
so when we talk about, for example, your father and the jobs that he had around the house, he would choose to cook, and he always did that, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he's a firefighter, and a lot of firefighters do cook, don't they?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he helped cook at the place too, a firefighter place.
Yeah.
Too.
And when you guys would sit down for family meals, it would often be your dad that cooked.
Yeah.
And those knives that were at your house, those cooking knives that you mentioned a moment, those were really your dad's knives, weren't they? He would use them for cooking. I mean, they were family knives. But.
Yeah. So yeah, for the most part, for him, to, like, use, and then whoever else was gonna cook something, you know. But
he was the primary cook. If there was,
if there was going to be labeled for any primary cook, it'd be him.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be surprising that his DNA was on those knives because he was using them all the time.
Yes.
Right. Wouldn't be surprising even that if his DNA was on the blades of the knives, because again, he was using them all the time. He was washing them.
Yes.
He was cutting with them.
Objection. It calls for speculation.
All right, sustained.
You mentioned during direct examination that one of the big things that they were fighting about was the attempt to get at the truth. And I just want to explore that with the following question. When your dad first disclosed that he had had an affair and that he had a problem of alcohol, was that about at the same time?
Could you repeat that one more time?
Did your father disclose his issue with alcohol to you and the affair at about the same time?
So the alcohol was a known thing. The affair was kind of just mixed into it when he just broke it down, like, I have a problem now, like this, and then I did this because of that problem. That's what
I want to ask you about.
Okay.
So he told you when he made this speech about
he blamed it on the alcohol. Yeah.
Blamed it on the alcohol.
Yeah.
Did he also tell you that he had broad-based sort of amnesia for a period of time during 2019? There were periods of time that he just could not remember?
Me personally, no, but overhearing conversation, yes.
This was something that the whole family knew that he was claiming, right?
Objection.
Sustained.
We mentioned a moment ago that you weren't sure if Katrina's stuff was in that living room area, and I don't want to belabor the point too much, but didn't Katrina own a big stuffed moose?
That I bought her, yes.
Yeah, and wasn't that in the living room with all of her stuff in 2021 and 2020?
That would have been in my room still, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
If anything, it would have got brought up to where the sectional is. And then way past everyone is when I decided to put out like the family table that's right there.
But the sectional is in one room, right? It's like one
it's right next to, so there's the flooring's different. There's wood floor and there's tile floor. On the sectional, it's the tile floor. That's where I believe the moose would have been.
Okay, so there's, just so I'm clear, there's one big room. It has a dining room and a living room.
Yeah.
One room. The only distinction between the two rooms is that they have different flooring. So you walk from one floor to the next. It's essentially one room.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Now, during the time that you lived between 2018 and 2020, January of 2021, You were living at the 679 Moraine Street home. We've established that, correct?
Yeah, I mean, between if it wasn't at 679, it would have been in Whitman hands with my ex-girlfriend.
So there were periods of time, there were periods of breaks, but in that course of that 3-year period that we're talking about, you would have been at your mom's house for.
I could have shown up whenever I wanted, pretty much.
Right.
So,
And you would see your father during that time 3-4 times a week anyway.
yeah, I mean, just to visit or needing something in there or talking to somebody. I mean, the phone.
Did you ever notice any injuries on him during that time?
There was always hand markings and cuts and stuff, but that was from pipe cutting and stuff like that, and
because of his work, in other words?
yeah. So I mean, you're dealing with steel pipes and stuff, so you can inside, so.
So we'd often have cuts on his hands.
Yeah. The only noticeable thing on a face would have been his surgery, but I don't know what year or.
So there was a moment in time where your father got septum surgery.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, he had a splint on his nose, correct?
Yes.
And he had some sort of retainer inside.
Something holding it in. He wasn't able to sneeze or do certain things.
And he had some black eyes, didn't he? At that time, just close to the nose.
That could be a possibility. I'm not sure.
And does it refresh your recollection at all if I told you it was in January of 2020 that he got that surgery? Does that sound right to you? About a year before his passing?
The year before his passing?
About a full year before his passing.
Yeah, I mean, there had to have been some time because I don't remember him being anywhere close to having that thing near his nose towards his end of his life. So.
Yeah. So that only event, that's the only bruising or marks that you ever saw on his face?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, your mother was a Zumba instructor as her primary work, correct?
Yes.
Right. She did that essentially full time, right?
Yeah. That was die hard Zumba.
Yeah. And so she would do sort of classes in her room sometimes, or in the Zumba room, the exercise room that used to be Michael Jr.'s. Right?
Yeah.
And she'd be up there essentially all the time in 2018, 2019, 2020, because that's where she taught her classes.
Yeah. So if it wasn't her room, it wasn't Michael's old room, or if it was in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm. And she'd be doing a bunch of classes a day, right?
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't her Zumba class, it was yoga class or something like that. She was being a participant of.
Okay.
And stuff like that. So.
And she also did things like Zumba cruises that she would leave and do. And that was all during that post 2018 period.
Could have been right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't like after 2018, she became moribund and never left the house. It wasn't like that at all, right? She was even headlining. These
progressively, it got worse. I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
She was still trying to go on the cruises, but I don't know.
So she'd go on cruises. She'd be away from home for weeks at a time doing the cruise.
For the cruise, yeah, I'd say so, yeah.
And then she'd come back and she'd do Zumba classes out of the Zumba room upstairs or her room, right?
Her kitchen, yeah.
She'd be doing yoga classes up there as well, right?
Yeah.
And she was also a student, right? She became first a part-time student, right, at Quincy College.
Yes.
And then later a full-time student.
I believe so, yes.
And was it your understanding that the reason that she went back to school was because she wanted to sort of understand what was going on with your dad, at least initially?
Yeah, if not that, then just to help the family or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I know she wanted to start a group, I'm not sure exact name for it, but just something along those lines of what she was studying for.
So
like a business type of thing.
Did you ever get the impression that your mother had any doubts about your father's alcoholism? Did you ever have any of that sense?
Objection.
Sustained.
Your mother, though, seemed to be supporting your father?
Yes, for his recovery, yes.
For his recovery and in his counseling, correct?
Yes.
And in his therapy?
Yeah, I mean, if he would miss it, it'd that'd be another argument, you know.
And they would go to couples therapy together, right?
Yeah.
Right. And one moment, I'm sorry. You're aware that even a year before the affair, your mother had severe joint issues, didn't she? And she would wear
arthritis.
And she would wear prostheses on her arms sometimes, on
Left
her hands.
arm, yeah.
Uh-huh. And just so we're clear, the period of time, at least from during the period of time when the house was, as you say, was the progressive period of time where she was spending more time in the house.
Yeah.
That was during COVID, right? It was from like March 2020 till essentially just on the eve of your father's death, right?
Yeah.
And you had to leave home to go to work, right? Because you were a custodian, you had to take care of the school.
Yeah.
And your dad had to go to work because he was a necessary employee. He was a firefighter, right?
Yeah.
But basically all of America was at home during that time for most
Pretty
of the
much
time,
if you
right?
weren't essential worker, yeah.
Yeah. And again, your mother was running her businesses out of her house.
Yep. Yeah, because the Zumba people who can't go out do Zumba in those gyms and stuff like that, what are you gonna do? Sit around? No, then do it on Zoom or something, you know.
Got it. Thank you. Nothing further.
No problem.
Redirect.
Angel, you were asked on cross-examination about the knife incident we discussed occurring possibly in June of 2019. Do you remember that line of questioning?
Yeah, I believe so.
I think you indicated you thought maybe it was like warmer months when it happened.
Yes.
And you described that incident occurred and that there was some sort of incident with Michael before you even got home, correct? After that particular incident, Michael no longer lived at the home with you guys, did he?
Yeah, so that's the question I have for myself is like when he officially left, because there was a lot of like him going back and forth, but like it was like to fix things or to pick things up. And then on top of it is worrying about my sister too.
Okay. And during the time between 2019 and 2020, you communicated a lot with your girlfriend at the time, Katrina.
Yeah, I mean.
And you guys texted a lot.
Yeah.
So when you weren't together, you were constantly texting.
Yeah.
May I approach the witness?
Yes.
Katrina, that's him.
This is Katrina.
No. And it says, is my mom. I plan to approach him just to refresh his memory of the date and time. I think we need to approach him.
jurors, we're going to suspend the testimony today. It's just a little after 4 o'clock, and it's been a full day for all of you. I will remind you now of the rules that you must abide by. Don't do any research about this case. Don't speak to anyone about the case, and continue to have open minds as you listen to the evidence in the case. We'll see you back here ready to begin your day at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Court will rise to the courage to place the notebooks in the chair. Exit out of the jury box this way.
Okay, we're just gonna see if there's conversation. And then we're gonna hop over to Judge Simpson for that other veteran hearing.
All right. So I want to address the issue that we were addressing just now at the side of the bench at 8:30 tomorrow morning. So you know they usually open the door around that time or a little bit earlier. See if you can sort out what it is, and also recognize you need to, both of you need to educate me with regard to what's going on here, because I'm not sure that I'm following along with the arguments, because I have, again, a deficit of knowledge. I'm just going to say, it seems to me that if this incident, the incident with regard to the knife being held to the stomach is on the day that Michael leaves the home, that date is definable by the medical records. I take it from the angst I'm seeing on the faces to the right of me that you don't believe it was that date. And so it may be that that text message is evidence of another bad act, but I can't tell from that. And honestly, I don't even know who the recipients are. I'll take your word from it, is that that's between Katrina and the witness. But you need to do a little work so you can educate me on the issue so I can make a logical ruling. There's another issue that's come to my attention. Can I see the last exhibit for identification?
She is so beautiful and elegant.
I marked for identification a note from one of the members of the press that's here. And the request is, to whom it may concern, Law and Crime is looking to set up a second camera towards the end of the trial, August 5th, and on till a verdict, just like the Zoom cameras. We also wanted to know if we can film in the courtroom gallery. Any help will be appreciated. Here's my help. No. To the extent that the press is asking for a camera to be placed on this side of the bar, this area of the bar, the courtroom is a public courtroom, but this side of the bar is reserved for certain people. Those people include me and the lawyers and my staff. The public doesn't come on this side of the bar unless you're involved in criminal proceedings. So I don't think it's appropriate for the press to be on this side of the bar at any time during the trial. As I understood it from my clerk, the request was that the camera would be on this side of the bar. And I won't allow that, not only for the reason that I just stated, but also because one of the ways this courtroom is set up is the witness stand is located in an area which effectively has all the jurors turned towards the front of the courtroom, and they then have their backs to the cameras. It's not an issue with regard to them being distracted by the cameras because they're looking up here. But if there were some other kind of camera in their sight view, I am concerned that they might be distracted by it, and I won't have that. I'm not waiting, by the way, for an opposition, because this one is within my discretion, and it's a request for more, not a request not to have coverage. All right.
So that'll be marked for identification. Madam Clerk, I hand that back to you because God knows it'll be lost up here. What's the schedule of witnesses for tomorrow, Commonwealth?
We're having to adjust just a little bit our intended witness order due to some previously discussed obligations.
Yes.
So what we can tell the court is obviously finishing with Angel tomorrow morning. We need to actually just discuss amongst ourselves. I'm happy to, with your honor's permission, to let the clerk and obviously defense counsel know. We're just running into, we might need to just switch things up just a little bit due to the witnesses we've divided up and prior obligations of some people with appointments. So
I know you'll be talking tonight to each other. It is helpful for the court to also know. I'm going to ask you it every night of both counsels, so just get used to the question.
Absolutely. We will be fully transparent. As soon as we know anything, we'll share both with defense counsel and the court.
All right. I don't have any other items that I need to raise with you, but I'm happy to answer whatever questions you have of me.
Perhaps tomorrow morning and prior to Katrina Freeman testifying, I just feel as though we might need to revisit just the court's order as it relates to issues my brother brought up as to calling it Mother's Day, for example, and the kids being present. I just wanted to raise that because that was something that was in my mind a little bit unfinished. So
It is unfinished, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to know who's coming next.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Nothing from the Commonwealth.
We may need to do a little bit of discussion about Robert Higgins if he's going to be testifying tomorrow, just with regard to clarifying some things on the sort of a similar vein as Katrina Freeman. Just figuring out what prior acts he would be testifying to and what they are exactly.
All right, see if you can work it out. If you can't, I'll listen to you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Have a good night.
All right.
No, she almost did though.
You all right?
I'm great.
We all matched. What color are we wearing tomorrow?
What do you want?
I know, what color?
She must be on bail, because otherwise surely she wouldn't be able to just head out the door like that. Okay, let me scroll up and answer some questions. I think she's out on bond, I think. Little Miss, don't worry, I knew what you meant. And basically the answer would be no, because I have been in journalism for, I keep forgetting how many years, but about 10 years. So majority of my life and job is going and hearing all of the things and then keeping myself objective and constantly playing like devil's advocate in my head. And this is why I land up in arguments so often, because I have to bring up the opposing side. Oh my gosh, how can she be so cute? Yeah, so that's what I thought as well. And I think it was Chini was saying that that's how they do it in Canada. But for a second, I was like, your brother? No, not quite. We're going to watch Judge Simpson, because that guy, the veteran accused of stabbing, of killing the Colombian woman and leaving her in a ditch, he's back now in Judge Simpson's court. I just need to figure out a way that you can see Phoebe properly. I hope I haven't gone back too far. But after that, then yes, probably, because it is 20 past 10. And if I get an early night, then I can figure this out again tomorrow to be live or like 30 seconds delayed.
Ability to have a fair hearing and a productive preliminary examination. So is it better the way I said it that way?
Yes.
Okay.
So like, you think we should
Just
like,
back a smidge.
As well as
Resume it.
from the
Like signed by the judge. I have the original one, so it's for you. Signed by the judge. I just have everyone else's review.
Lil Miss. Lil Miss, I have so much research on it. Here is the problem. Did I just leave my phone recording that whole time? Gosh, I hope not. I can't remember where I saved it. I might have it in my tab of, here we go. I've got it. Okay, I'm going to read it from my phone for the sake of not jumping between tabs there. Okay. I am also going to make it a video. I was just waiting for a little bit more information and to see if I could get a better version of what the family is saying than what I have. Woman found dead in rural Washtenaw County, identified as tourist from Brazil. Sorry, I said somewhere else. A woman found dead in rural Washtenaw County has been identified as a tourist from Brazil. Suzanne Christian Barbosa Ferreira, 42, was found dead Sunday, 30 June by passers-by in Northfield Township. She had been traveling in parts of North Carolina and Michigan, according to her sister, Renata Santana, 45. Northfield Township police have declined to comment on the investigation or confirm Ferreira was the woman found. Santana said her sister had been identified using dental records. Ferreira of Minas Gerais in Brazil, don't know if I said that right, I apologize, had been in the US for roughly a month. Her family became concerned after they stopped hearing from her on June 23rd, which Santana said was unusual. Ferreira had been scheduled to visit her sister in the UK. She would have been with us by now, Santana said. A GoFundMe to cover funeral expenses and the cost of getting Ferreira's body to Brazil has raised roughly £1,500, or just under $2,000. Ferreira's body was found by a couple walking in the area near 6 Mile Road, north of Ann Arbor and east of Whitmore Lake around 9:30 on June 30th. They said they were initially drawn to the area by a smell and thought a deer had been hit. They immediately called police upon finding Ferreira. Deb Rondon said it was sickening and shocking. It was a sickening and shocking discovery. Ferreira was naked when she was discovered. As far as I can tell, she had also been chopped up. The incident has shaken neighbors who have expressed concern that the remoteness of the area means there'll be little camera evidence that could identify a suspect. Basically, then what happened was this veteran was the last person to be known to be with her. He lied about being with her, and so he became a suspect. They're saying he's not. The community is rallying behind him, saying he's not. However, the prosecution is pushing hard. I think his bail was $2 million. I need to refresh myself on the last hearing, but I just know if I have to go back and find it now, we're going to be here a long time, because I have currently got, like, not exaggerating, 34 Judge Simpson videos that are busy downloading so that I can put stories together. I just want to grab my cool drink. I'll be back in a second.
14A District Court for County of Washtenaw, State of Michigan is now back in session. The Honorable Judge Jason.
You may be seated. But didn't I say you may be seated? What is, I don't know what he would do and Louis were doing.
All right.
Okay. Are we bringing Chang up? Court calls the case of the people versus Thomas Chang.
Your Honor, Joe Simon on behalf of Thomas Chang. State your name again, Thomas. My name is Thomas Chang.
All right. Where are we on this?
Your Honor, first of all, appreciate you allowing us to come back on the docket. Your Honor, this morning I started by saying I didn't want to make a bond reduction motion and instead was requesting a 10% privilege. And I think that technically that probably is a reduction in a sense. But I didn't want to make a bond reduction motion because I'm just coming up to speed on the case and I didn't want to go into all the detail, et cetera. There's videos to go through, et cetera. So if the court is going to, I've already made my piece on my request for the 10%. If the court is going to deny that request, then we're just going to ask the court to set a PCC date out a little bit. I dare I say that date of the 13th would work well. But if the court would grant the request, that's
all day.
My client's parents are here and prepared to do whatever the eventuality happens.
Any additional information?
Nothing further, Your
All right. The court, in listening to the argument on the case and reviewing the file, because I was also trying to get as much information as I could from the original arraignment and the like, which I had not reviewed or looked at or in any way processed. But in looking at that, the court would not believe that a 10% privilege on this particular bond, given the circumstances of this case at this time, would be appropriate, or find that the magistrate in any way abused their discretion in doing so. So the motion for that modification is denied.
Thank you, Your Honor. I do want to know if the court could possibly give me a copy of the pretrial release order as it stands, because I don't even have that. If I can get that.
Release?
Or that, sorry, the boss.
Yeah, it's generally it's a domestic violence conditional release.
Okay,
but that's fine. You need an actual copy of the.
If I could.
We can take care of that.
Thank you very much. And
What
then,
date would you like it set for? The 13th?
I understand there's a docket going on the 13th.
Why?
I understand there's a docket going on the 13th, Your Honor.
There is.
That would be
it was
great.
supposed to be limited for me, but it's apparently not doing that now because of Simon. So I will set probable cause in this matter for August 13th, 2024, 9 a.m. or as your invite indicates.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Bond will continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
He that right there.
It's not your creature, just came in there early and young and walked out of your courtroom just so.
Are they? Well, who are they going to bring? Lawson? Where can you go get Miss Young? Or cause case people versus John Quez Lawson.
on behalf.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Is this honorable court Rita Young appearing on behalf of Mr. Shanquez Lawson, who is present and standing to my right? Judge, before the court today is unfortunately my motion to withdraw. I have a scheduling conflict and it will, if I ask the court to adjourn this matter, it will be past probably the end of August. And I'm sure Mr. Lawson would rather proceed sooner than that.
Well, yeah, I get that. But the problem here that I'm having with this is when we originally set this, Ms. Young, one of the things we did is we were trying to work around your schedule as well as we were folding into the setting of this case, the co-defendant who wasn't going to go to exam, but has their PCC coming up with the knowledge that if they proceeded to exam, they were going to the 13th. So I don't know what they've done in terms of their schedule.
But judges, no way, I know this court was trying to accommodate my schedule, but there's no way that I could be in Flint, Michigan, stop that trial, and then be here by 12 noon, and then be back in Flint, Michigan to resume it the same day. It would be impossible.
I understand that, but I also understand that if you're replaced, then the effect for the defendant in this case, Mr. Lawson, is it's going to be adjourned anyway. I don't know that anybody's going to be able to get ready in under 3 weeks.
So knowing that, Mr. Lawson, did you want me to stay on the case, or do you object to it being taken down to the end of August, 1st of September?
I don't care. I mean, plotting it out in my head, Mr. Lawson, because I was back thinking about what to do to try to get you to exam the quickest. That's what I was trying to do. And so we had the 13th. That apparently is getting messed up. And then if I appointed new counsel, I haven't seen all the evidence in the case by design. I don't know, but I have some indication there's like 90 media files. There's a lot of stuff there.
There are hundreds of videos.
There's what?
Several hundred videos.
Okay.
As well as a significant amount of paper discovery now.
Okay. So that makes it even worse than what I was thinking. And so that if I brought somebody new on, I don't, if they came to me and I appointed new counsel and said, I can't be ready on the 13th, I need an adjournment, I'd be hard pressed not to grant them the adjournment anyway. If for no other reason than to protect you and your rights and making sure that that was a hearing for you. You follow me?
Hey, can you say that one more time, sir?
Okay. All right. If I were to give you counsel, if I replace Ms. Young, put new counsel in today, right? With the amount of discovery and evidence in the case, having practiced myself, I don't think they're going to be ready by the 13th. Because as Mr. Childers was just indicating, you got hundreds of videos, you've got the other discovery. You got to kind of put that together in your mind so that they can do at least minimally effective cross-examination at the preliminary exam. So what would actually end up happening is I would replace Ms. Young, put a new attorney on, they'd ask to adjourn it, and you'd be out anyway. Got it? And if they came to me, I mean, somebody might be able to be ready on the 13th. I would question it. But if they came to me and then asked, I left it on the 13th and they asked me for an adjournment, I would almost have to adjourn it. Not because I would want to or in any way punish you. It would be my way of really trying to protect your rights and your ability to have a fair hearing and a productive preliminary examination. So is it better the way I said it that way?
Yes.
Okay.
So like you think we should just stick with Rita and then just wait until she's ready?
Okay, I don't know who the we is, but that'd be up to you to stick with Ms. Young. Okay. She's familiar with the case. I mean, here's a benefit. She's familiar with the case. It's just that her schedule doesn't allow it to happen. Okay. And that happens sometimes.
So you think you can like probably
I would be glad to represent you and continue on. If you don't have a problem with it being put over to possibly September.
Here's what, when I was back there thinking. the September 3rd, that could,
The only, I'm not the trial, I would not be the attorney handling Miss Londi and Mr. Evans. I don't have their schedule.
together. I mean, no, I'm sorry.
I don't have their schedules in front of me. Obviously, as this court knows, we don't have an issue, nor would we ever have an issue with this young needing more time to review discovery before an exam, but I can't speak to their availability on that date. We could set it. I'm very much aware, we're not gonna try and kick this thing out any farther than we can, but I don't know what their availability looks like on that date.
But I am available on that date, Your Honor, if you want to put it as a tentative date. And
So I don't do tentative. So I'm gonna set it for the 3rd.
Okay.
Okay, so that couple weeks out, 2 weeks out. All right, best I can do, Mr. Lawson. And then if for whatever reason the prosecutors are not available, then that's gonna be a problem. And we'll have to figure out a new date, but I'm not gonna let it. Mr. Lawson, I guarantee I'm just not gonna let it get pushed out for no reason. Okay. The one advantage with Miss Londi being on the case is Miss Londi is now assigned to my court. So she technically follows me. So she should be available.
There's no reason off the top of my head why that date shouldn't work, but I just felt, obliged to put that on the record.
All right. Mr. Lawson, will all of that work with you? I know it's a whole lot to throw at you right now, but.
I ain't got no choice. I'm in jail.
Well, you have a choice. I mean, you have a choice. I don't want you to think you don't have a choice. Your choice is that I would grant Ms. Young's motion, allow her to withdraw and get you counsel and pray that they'd be ready to go on the 13th.
want to do that?
I did message Miss Londi. There are 690 videos.
Excuse me?
695.
I thought you stuttered. All right.
So what was your response to the judges?
I can wait.
What'd you say?
I just took the mission.
Okay. I think, and that's your decision. I just wanted to make sure you had all your choices. I'm going to tell you, to the extent it matters to you, I think that's a smart call. Do it this way.
Thank you, Honor.
So preliminary examination in this matter will be adjourned
Until?
to September 3rd, 2024 at 9 a.m. That's before me. Person.
No boss.
Yeah, he's not going.
All right. All right. And I don't know who has communication with the co-defendant.
I'll make sure that.
And so I think it's pardon?
Correct date.
Yeah, make sure that they know, because what I told them, I think they're here on August 8th. And I told them that if they were going to hold an exam, that it was going to go to the 13th. So I just like to make sure that he knows that they'll be here on the 8th, but it would go to the 3rd.
Yes.
And did I hear the court say that my co-counsel was Craig Daly?
Tank?
Craig Tank? Okay. All right, thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Law.
No, not today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think our guy's coming up. All those people in the gallery may well be there for him because he filled the place last time. Can't tell if that Sarah Boone thing I saw is new or if it's just a certain channel posting about it late.
Let's call the case of the people versus Farhid Jahar.
Judge Blanche, here on behalf of all.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Mark Krieg on behalf of Mr. Haidar. Good afternoon, Your Honor. Ryan Marat, PA 3665 on behalf of Mr. Fareed Hajar, who stands present to our right. Mr. Hajar, state your name for the record, sir.
It's him.
Fareed Hajar.
All right, thank you. All right, this is the date time set for the decision on bond motion. Was there any additional information or argument from counsel?
Yes, there is some additional information.
Yes, sir.
The court was kind enough to adjourn it so that we could get a copy of the discovery, and we did get a copy of the discovery. If the court recalls, at the last hearing, I said, we don't know what the cause of death is. It could be, yes, it could be homicide, but it could be a drug overdose. I don't, if the court recalls.
I recall.
Two things that I would like to update the court on. First, I was puzzled by the medical examiner's statement that Ms. Blanche was kind enough to forward to me, where she said it's consistent with homicide, but the manner and cause of death may never be known. Those two statements, to me, can be reconciled. So I actually called the medical examiner and spoke with her. And she said to me, I'm not going to talk to you about this because I don't have anything final. And I said, well, I saw the email that you sent to Ms. Blanche. And she says, well, that was a private email. Judge, I don't think it's the business of a medical examiner to be sending private emails not to be shared with defense counsel. But Ms. Blanche understood ethically that she was required to do it, and I commend her for that. So I don't have any more information, but she certainly couldn't explain how those two statements can be reconciled. But more importantly, Your Honor, I got the discovery. And the discovery, I'd like to read to you a portion of it. It's not very long. What was not in dispute in this case, or I don't think is in dispute in this case, is that Mr. Haraj had two escorts at his house that on the evening of the 22nd, going into the early morning hours of the 23rd. And one of the escorts was a woman named Tatiana Perez, who lives in New Jersey. And the police department went to New Jersey to interview her. And I'd like to read to you what it says. Perez said they returned to Habibi's residence in Dearborn after dinner. Habibi is Mr. Haraj. Perez said there was another girl, Susan, and that's the deceased in this case. Susan, Perez said there was another girl, Susan, she knows, staying at the same hotel in Novi, and asked if Habibi wanted her to call Susan over. Habibi agreed to this and arranged an Uber to pick Susan up and to bring her to his house. Perez said when Susan arrived, the three began drinking and hanging out by Habibi's pool. Perez said they went into another room in the house, and that is when they started using cocaine. Perez said she does not use drugs and decided to leave. So what we do know, at least from the other witness that was present, is that Suzanne, the deceased, was doing cocaine, according to this, and could have overdosed, could have had a heart attack, so on.
But counsel, I mean, and I don't know if you want to make that argument, because if depending on who supplied the cocaine, but certainly it being at the location, if it's that drug overdose that then results in a death, you got a whole other problem.
And I recognize that. But the evidence in this case, the discovery, there is no evidence, and I mean, burden of proof is on the people or the prosecutor. There is no evidence that those drugs were supplied by Mr. Hajar. Nothing. There was a white powder found in a backpack belonging to, who I think belonged to Suzanne, although that's not quite clear. Although the white powder did not test positive for cocaine. So I don't want to mislead the court. But the point that I'm trying to make, the burden of proof is is on the government at every stage of the proceeding, include, although the burden of proof is lower at a.
But counsel, I don't leave behind my just common sense. I mean, I'm not sure or wise in everything in the world. Maybe somebody could tell me because I don't deal with escorts. So, I mean, I don't know if they bring their own cocaine. I would assume that that's not what happens.
But Judge, in all due respect, I mean, we're making an assumption where a man is presumed innocent, isn't even charged with this.
Counsel, this whole thing is full of assumptions. I mean,
No,
you're
there's certainly-
assuming it's a drug overdose. I don't know that.
I'm not assuming it's a drug overdose, but what I am saying to the court is the court was extremely concerned based on the evidence that Mr. Haidar may have been the one that committed if it was a homicide at all, and we don't even know that he was responsible for the death. But there's no.
No. Certainly that becomes a question, but to say I was overly concerned about that, here's what I have, counsel. I have his phone at the scene where this body is.
I'm not disputing that.
I have this woman, along with another woman, as I'm to understand it, that goes into his house. Her phone, the deceased phone, is pinged to his location. And then it's time also to understand nothing else after that. So there is certainly a whole lot that can be made up in there or assumed to be, but I got somebody that's dead. The last place I had that person is his house. That's what I got.
That's what you've got. I'm not disputing any of that, Your Honor. And that's why when I filed this motion, I didn't ask for a personal bond. I asked for a $100,000, 10% bond because the defendant has not been charged with a murder, but recognizing that there are circumstances which might lead one to believe, although he's presumed to be innocent, that somehow he was involved in a homicide. But there's no evidence at this stage that it was a homicide. All we know is that this woman was found in a field. We can put him in that location at that time, but he hasn't been charged with the murder. And I'm not saying, Judge, and I maybe I'm just not making myself clear, but I'm not saying that it shouldn't be some kind of a cash bond, although the presumption in Michigan is to give a personal bond. But a $2 million cash or surety bond, where he has to pay a bail bonds person $200,000 that is not refundable. If the court believes that a $2 million bond is appropriate, which again, in all due respect, I don't think is appropriate, then it ought to be at least a 10% bond. There's a case that the court may be familiar with, and that is People versus Reginald Davis. And in that case, the defendant was charged. Okay, I can bring the court a copy of it. May I approach the bench? This is a case where the defendant was actually charged with murder. And the judge allowed him to be released on bond. The Court of Appeals reversed it because the statute says that bond shall be denied where the proof is evident or the presumption great. It then went to the Michigan Supreme Court, and the Michigan Supreme Court remanded it back, saying that's inconsistent. Is that inconsistent with the court rule and with the Michigan Constitution that says may be denied? Ultimately, the Court of Appeals ruled that a defendant can be admitted to bond even where the proof is evident or the presumption great. And that's a case where he was actually charged with murder. The court does not say what the bond was in that case. But in our case, and the court said bond ought to be reasonable. That according to the court rule. So what I'm saying, Your Honor, is I'm not asking this court to release him on a personal bond. It's obvious to me, and I've been doing this long enough to read the tea leaves that this court is not going to grant a bond that I've requested of $100,000, 10%, but a $2 million cash or surety bond where the defendant has not been charged with a homicide. It's not even clear that it was a homicide. I just think that that bond is unreasonable. So if the court made it a 10% bond, at least they could post it and maybe get some of it back at some point. But I also want one other thing. If the court will recall, if you look at all of the factors that are set forth in 6.106, one of them is a third-party custodian. I introduced the court to a former Detroit police officer who has known Mr. Haidar since they were in high school together. He said he would act as a third-party custodian. He's a retired police officer, but there's nothing in Mr. Haidar's background that would indicate outside of this offense that he has ever had any tendency towards violence. And I just think that while maybe a substantial bond, if the court feels it's appropriate, so be it. But $2 million cash or surety, I think is excessive in violation of the Constitution. I've said my piece, Your Honor.
You would agree that reasonableness would also have to be balanced against one's means.
Correct. And if he had a $200,000, he'd be out by now, Judge.
So do you want me to go through and just pull all of his financial records and anything that he's attached to in order to make a proper determination of reasonableness? I mean, that's what's going to happen. I mean, if I take your argument, that's what has to happen.
If the court was prepared, if the court wants his financial information, I'll supply it. But again, if we talked about this, Your Honor, that I said that really whether he pays a bail bondsman $200,000.
Counsel, let's be real about this, because I think if I take the financial things, my understanding is he's tied to 11 different businesses.
He works for Kenwell Steel. That's his main business.
Whoa. But that he has interest in 12 other companies or 11 other companies.
I don't think that's accurate, Judge. He has his own, he has a business on the side where he does IT work.
Come in. All the stuff which we don't make any money. It's been progress.
There's one other business. And at this time, it's not even showing a profit. And if the court wants to put him under oath, subject to the penalties of perjury, so be it.
I don't need to do that to set a bond, counsel. You're really making this a whole lot more complicated, I think, than it need be. But, I mean, I'm willing to go there if that's what you want me to do.
Well, what I would, what I would really like, Your Honor, is if you could make it a 10% bond.
I know. That's what you would like.
That's what I would
And the
like.
people object.
That's right.
That is where I'm trying to balance where I land on that.
Correct.
And I can only get there by what I see in the case, what risk he would pose to leave or what risk he would pose to the community.
But he would be on a GPS tether. And if the court requires him not to live in his house and to live with Mr. Garza, he's prepared to do that. I've spoken to Mr. Garza and he said he would put him up. But again, I just keep repeating myself, Your Honor, but the point that I'm trying to make is there is no evidence at this stage that there was a homicide, that the cause and manner of death. So what you're looking at is a guideline range of either 0 to 17 or 10 to 24 at tops at this stage. If he's charged with murder down the road, then of course the court would have the option, if the proof is evident or the presumption great, to deny bond and remand him. But at this stage, for these charges, even given what you characterize as suspicious circumstances, I think a $2 million.
Quick, counsel, you need to stop with what I'm characterizing.
With
I am just laying out what I know. That's all I'm doing. I'm not giving weight to anything at all. I'm just laying out what I know.
Right, but I think the court is concerned about the safety of the community because of the circumstances.
Anytime there's a dead body and somebody's around a dead body, yeah, darn it, I'm a little bit concerned.
Right, and understandably so. And that's why I don't expect the court to release him on some nominal bond. But $2 million, 10% is not a nominal bond. That's a substantial amount of money. And if the court wanted him to, in addition to that $200,000, 10% bond, to post a house where he lives, we're prepared to do that. And then that gives some surety in addition. But I think a $200,000 cash or surety bond, they have to pay a bail bondsman this huge premium that will never be returned when he hasn't been convicted of a crime. He hasn't even been charged with a homicide. And he's only facing at this stage a charge that carries a maximum of 24 months under the guidelines. Now, I understand the guidelines are not mandatory. I know that. But, Your Honor, we live in a country where a person's presumed to be innocent. And there is no evidence in this record at this stage that this was a homicide, other than a statement that seems to be contradictory, consistent with a homicide, but I don't know whether we can ever determine the cause and manner of death. But Judge, I've been beating a dead horse, which I said the other day, but again, if the court does not feel that something less than a $200,000 10% bond is appropriate, so be it. But I think that's a reasonable, fair bond under the Constitution.
Anything from the people.
Yeah, just briefly, I just want to make the record correct on the fact that the medical examiner didn't email me. I actually received the email through my officer, so she wasn't emailing me and saying, don't share this with the defense. That wasn't what happened. She shared it with my sergeant and he sent it to me. So I just want to make the record correct on that. And he's right, this is not a homicide. That's why I'm not asking the court to deny the bond. I'm asking to set a bond. We had asked for $10 million to begin with. And under reasonableness, he's saying they can actually post this bond. They just don't like the fact they're not going to be able to get the money back. Which if you're making that statement, then how are you saying it's unreasonable when you actually can pay for it? You just don't like the fact that you're not going to get the money back. I was quiet during your argument, sir. Can I please finish?
Sure.
Judge, when it comes to cocaine, he's relying on, he's telling the court that an independent witness had suggested that the victim had ingested cocaine that night. I don't want to try this case right now on the record. However, the defendant said there was no cocaine at the area. He doesn't partake in those drugs, and there was none there that night. So there's conflicting statements around whether or not cocaine was actually at the place. So to just blanket say that we have a witness saying that, well, the defendant said there was no cocaine there that night. And this backpack that he says belonged to the victim, she walked in with suitcases that night. The police asked the defendant for the suitcase she walked in with, and he doesn't know where they are. So I'm just concerned what's been kind of portrayed on the record.
Hold on. I want to make sure I understand that. Who is saying that she walked in with suitcases?
Sorry, there's video showing her walking in with suitcases because she left the hotel, came to his house, and then the suitcases are gone.
Got it.
Judge, I don't believe the bond is unreasonable in these circumstances. I'm not asking you for the $2 million based on the fact that, this is a homicide right now. I'm asking based on the fact of defendant's misrepresentations to the police that night, the fact that we have a missing woman last seen going into his house, never coming out, and then his car going up to Northfield Township, and she's found dead in the place that his car was at. That alone, those circumstances, I believe that he presents extreme danger to the public, and I believe based on that, you can rule $2 million for his bond, and I don't believe it's unreasonable because he's already said that he could post the $200,000 to 10% to a surety bondsman. So I don't know how you can make that argument, Judge.
I can tell you exactly how I can make that argument because a bail bondsman requires collateral for the rest of the money. So they'd have to post collateral of $2 million. They don't have that. That's the problem. If it was just the $200,000, it may not, they could raise it, although I think it's punishment to have to do a non-refundable 200,000, but the bail bondsman requires surety such as a house. And that's $2 million because the bail bonds person needs to protect himself. No one's ever argued that he was a risk of flight. And again, this is a man who's in his 50s and has never been in trouble other than a 12-year-old drunk driving.
Counsel, what about the suitcases? What about his statement regarding this case?
You mean a statement about the cocaine?
Okay. No, about the suitcases. I mean, so that's part of the problem here. Part of the problem here is that there's going to be all of these things coming out that are going to cut one way and or another. And so I was, at least for the purposes of this decision, satisfied to say there are certain misrepresentations to people that was contained in the people's motion. But now when I get down into the specifics of what those misrepresentations may be, that raises more concern for me. I mean, because counsel, the witness you're talking about, you went through a lot of things about it potentially being something involving drugs. Then we find out, and you quote a statement about the drugs, only to find out your client's denying that there was ever any drugs. Then it just gets worse. I mean, at least in terms of my analysis of what risk he poses, because now I have that woman walking in on video with suitcases. She leaves there, the suitcases aren't to be found. They ask for suitcases, he doesn't know where they are.
There was one suitcase, it's not plural, but yes, the video
And
shows.
where's the suitcase?
Judge, I have not spoken to my.
No, but see, counsel, that's what I'm getting at. You want me to make an assessment regarding your client, the risk he poses. The more this stuff comes up, and when I ask the hard question, nobody wants to give me the answer.
I'll do my best, Your Honor. It's not unusual, at least in my experience, that people make false exculpatory statements.
I get it.
And
But they don't hide evidence. I mean, okay, that's the problem that I'm having now. Now, I come back today and there's this other added thing now that I think I can take into account in terms of the bond.
I'm not saying that you can't take that into account. It's never been my argument that you can't take those things into account. My argument is, Judge,
Counsel,
$2 million.
tell me what I now do with now an indication that there is potential evidence that is missing, and a statement, I think, is at least an indication from people that your client is misleading authorities as to the location of that evidence. What do I do with that?
I'd have to go back and look at the discovery because I don't want to misrepresent what the discovery. I don't recall exactly what he was questioned about the suitcase, but I know it came up in the interview. I just don't have it in front of me. But let's assume that he misled, just for argument's sake, he misled the police about that. I go back to my original point that the bond in this case, if all of that is true, then still, I think a $2 million cash or surety bond is excessive and unreasonable.
No.
All I'm asking for, Your Honor.
So it might need to be more. If I come to the assessment that not only is he misleading authorities because he has the right not to say anything.
Correct.
That's one thing. But now when the statements are being made and he's misleading authorities and that it may look like certain evidence is also being secreted away someplace, that changes the whole thing.
I mean, I don't know the evidence seems to be somewhat clear that they can place her in the house and place his car where the body was found. How a suitcase would add or subtract from the strength of the case, I don't see it. But I don't have any answer.
It depends on what you think happened.
Again, Your Honor.
And then it would also depend, and it may not add or subtract anything from the case. But then you have to ask the question, if I have an individual that then is not, though the defendants necessarily have to cooperate with authorities, but that is then not turning over evidence.
There was
that counsel that puts you into a whole other place, and you know that
they did a search warrant on the house. They executed a search warrant.
No, but counsel, they know that something exists. They ask your client. They have proof that something existed when it went into that house.
That's correct.
They ask your client about it. Your client says that it's not there, whatever he said. You know that that puts any argument that's being made from any court's perspective in terms of reasonableness of the bond, that puts it in a whole different light.
Judge, I made my.
That's what I'm saying. It's getting worse.
Your Honor, again, I don't want to just keep repeating myself. I'm not asking for a nominal bond. $200,000 is a lot of money. A lot of money for someone that's not charged with a homicide and is presumed innocent under our Constitution. Again, I'm not even, $1 million would be a sizable bond for someone with as it sits today, where there's no evidence that it was a homicide, that they haven't found the cause of death to be a homicide or the manner of death to be a homicide. And it would seem to me that.
But you have to factor into that. I also have somebody that it is also alleged as lying to authorities, who also is having evidence that they're not turning over to the police and or have secreted in some way and or destroyed. It doesn't go one way, counsel.
And I'm not saying it does go one way, but all I'm saying, Your Honor, is $200,000 is a substantial bond. If it's 10%, that's all I'm saying. I'm not asking the court to release him on a personal bond. I'm not although it was my original request to do $100,000 10% bond, but he's not charged with murder at this point. And they haven't even shown that it's a homicide at this point. And it may be quite some time before that happens. And he sits in jail on a case that has at worst 10 to 24 month guidelines. That's my argument, Judge. And I don't mean to keep repeating myself. I'm just asking that the court reduce it at this point to a 10% bond.
Anything else in the people?
No.
Court's going to stay in recess. Everybody can remain seated.
Okay, thankfully we can skip ahead. Let's see.
Is that should
I have so many things lined up to show you, but I can't do all of them tonight. So it's going to have to be a bit of a cliffhanger. And one of the things I wanted to mention is that I really want to watch Charlie Adelson's trial before Wendy's. I just scratched something and now it's bleeding. Before Wendy's. So we need to figure that out because Wendy's, I think, is very soon. And if you didn't watch that trial, I'm not going to give spoilers, but that's why I want to watch it before the next one so that there's no this is what happened and now we're here.
Fourteen-day district court for county of Washington, state of Michigan. Session, the Honorable Judge Simpson presiding.
May be seated. Yeah, for sure. Back on the record, case of the people versus Haidar. Counsel is present. The court has reviewed the Court of Appeals case, and read over the Court of Appeals cases provided by the defense. Let me first say, as I said at the end of the last hearing, I do not believe that the bond is set by the magistrate, at least based upon the information that the court had at the time, that this court had at the time, that this court could constitute or say that that was an abuse of discretion. What is notable in the defense's argument, and all of it certainly being legally correct, but then again, taking those arguments and applying them to particular factual circumstances, at least as the court would know them at this time, may be where there is some difference. Notable is the defense's statement that the $200,000 that may be required to pay a bondsman, that could be accomplished, but that then there is that the real crux of the issue is that should everything go forth through trial, through everything, where there would then be a release of that surety, that the defendant does not get that back, or the monetary funds back. That is correct, but they're also not having to put up the entirety of the $2 million. But what's notable in that is that the $200,000 could be indeed posted. The more the facts are laid out before this court, the more the court has not just questions, but certainly has concerns about safety to the public. I don't doubt that there are individuals at basically a full courtroom, the last hearing, that there would be individuals who would vouch and that the defendant could be released to. That isn't really the court's concern. What is of concern to the court is that as this is ongoing, the risk, the danger, as it is uncovered as to maybe what occurred in this case, would lead the court maybe to a different conclusion as to the defendant's danger to the community and the threat that he may pose. By way of example, certain facts today, some of them laid out in generalities, but not in specifics, were not known to the court just last week. And they do give this court great pause. And I don't think it unreasonable for this court to take into account what may be statements made for the purpose of misleading an investigation and or the concealment or the destruction of potential evidence in the case. One of the reasons why I wanted is counsel were going through everything last week, that the defense at least be presented with or have the discovery in case those arguments were made. That having been said, the court is going to rule in this case that the bond is set by the magistrate. As I've indicated, I don't believe is unreasonable. I do not believe, under the circumstances, I do not believe that it is unreasonable. I do not believe that it was an abuse of discretion in terms of the magistrate in setting the bond. To be quite frank with you, given what I learned today, it might lead this court to think that a higher bond might be required. But I'm not going to do that either. I'm going to leave the bond where it is at $2 million, cash or surety, so that it can be posted. I will do this, however. Should the defendant not be able to post that bond, I would give the defense an opportunity to produce to the court certain financials, which I think the court, certainly under the court rule and otherwise, can take into account in terms of his ability, not necessarily to pay the $200,000 to the bondsman, because it's already been acknowledged by defense that they can do that. The question is the collateral that would frame up to $2 million. And the court would take a look at that and then reevaluate if bond cannot be posted. The court would then reevaluate and take a look at the bond. I would also say, however, because of at least what the court knows or thinks it knows at this point in time, that as a additional condition of the defendant's bond, and I believe that the magistrate did order a GPS tether. I would order that if the defendant is released, he is to be a GPS tether is to be placed on the defendant prior to his release. Indicated also he would have to surrender any passport or any other documentation which would permit him to travel outside of the United States. Additionally, as part of this court's order, given what I've seen here, that should there be enough evidence at some point, and this will be a condition of his bond, that if there be enough evidence that the people would file and charge the defendant with open murder, first or second degree murder, or any other type of homicide type of an offense, that the defendant bond as set would be canceled, and he would then have to surrender himself immediately to the Washtenaw County Jail if those charges were to come about. And that would, as indicated, be a condition of his bond in this case. That is the ruling of this court. Is there any questions regarding the court's ruling?
I do have a question, Your Honor. Well, two questions. One is a comment, not a question. I had proposed to the court that in addition to if the court would impose a 10% bond, that in addition, we would post a house, which would be similar to what a bail bonds would require. I'm not sure how much equity there is in the house, so the court would consider that. And I think there's a relative that would also post a house in addition to his own. So I would ask that the court consider that. The second question I have, the next comment I have is the passport is already in the possession of law enforcement. It was in a safe that was taken at the time, and that is in the discovery that they have possession of his passport. The question I have, if somehow at some point he does get released, can he work? I know he has to have a GPS tether, but I would like him to be, his employers, I gave a letter to the court last week, said they would take him back.
But would he leave the state of Michigan?
No, he would not leave the state of Michigan.
Originally, a home confinement was ordered, so I don't know if that was not unreasonable deemed by the court, but that was originally, the home confinement was ordered on his side.
Without much else, I don't know that I'd order a home confinement. I would just order a GPS tether with location tracking.
Would the court consider if we can post 2 residences that equal, let's say?
Counsel, I think I was very direct in my.
Okay.
That is.
I'm going to shut up, Judge.
If the bond is set cannot be posted, I'm giving the defense an opportunity to provide to the court financials that would lead the court in a different direction or to restructure his bond.
Thank you.
So with those conditions, defendant's motion is denied regarding a reduction or change in bond. I've given the opportunity for you to do other things and provide that to the court. I will look at it. I will diligently look at it. And if there's something that can be fashioned, I will do so.
I appreciate it, Judge.
All right.
May I have a word with the client and my co-counsel regarding the next probable cause conference?
Sure.
Okay.
The people will prepare their order for the court signature. Yes.
Sorry, I was muted. He hasn't been charged. I was also confused. He has been arraigned. The charges he faces do not include murder. Hey, the throne is mine, and
You
leave.
might, that microphone, you might want to hit that so that it's not picking up. They're very sensitive. So it needs to be green. It should be green if it's.
And I appreciate the court's patience. It's been the longest bond hearing I've heard.
Yes, and after 25 years sitting here, my longest one ever. So.
Your Honor, we would ask the probable cause conference to be put over 1 week so that we can see whether he has the wherewithal to post a bond under this current conditions or whether we need to present financial information. So that would be, let me just make sure I have that date open.
August 1st.
Pardon?
That would be August 1st.
August. Can I just check my calendar, Judge? That looks good. Do you want to do it at 3 o'clock again?
No, my PCCs, so here's what would happen. My PCCs are set in the morning. If you were to file something or wanted something heard, it gets switched to this 3 o'clock time.
Okay, fair.
So
okay,
I set everything at 9. You will get a invite from the court which puts you into one of the hour blocks throughout the day so that you're not here all day waiting.
Okay, and then
You're
if,
set in the 9 o'clock block, because it's the in custody block, which currently he would be set in, is a 3-hour block, but.
great. May I approach the bench with the prosecutor for a moment?
I'm gonna read.
Probable cause.
I'm gonna read the charges in a sec. It's weird.
Record should reflect that at a brief bench conference in this case. Probable cause conference in this matter will be set August 1st, 2024, 9 a.m.
I'm sorry, Judge. I didn't hear, I was.
It's August 1st, 9 a.m. for PCC. Bond will continue in its dollar amount with terms as stated on the record.
Okay, looks like that's done. So here's the exact wording, which this is what confused me, and it sounds like oh, there's no cat there. I can remove that one for now. It sounds like the victim was found naked, but not what I originally said. But here's the charges that was so confusing. Was arraigned in a Chelsea courtroom on Friday on charges of disinterment and mutilation of a dead body and concealing the death of an individual. I think that is because of the naked part. But you can see why I was like, it's very confusing. There's not really a ton of clarity right now on what happened because the family hasn't really done like a ton of interviews, and obviously there hasn't been that much court time. So that is where we are at on that. No, it's not that. It's not that one. It's the wording is, I'll paste it. Disinterment. This is the wording. Yes. Or I think his theory is that she was playing with grown-up sweets, left, died in the road, on the side of the road. But he did also originally say she wasn't there. So it's a bit of a tricky one. And I really want to know what the rest of the story is that we're not hearing. But it's going to be a while. Okay, got you. Got you, Lil Miss. I'm not going to put that on screen because you know what's going to happen. Okay, so Lil Miss actually picked this up earlier. This is around the trial we were watching, the murder trial. You need to watch the mom's lips. I know that it is not very clear, but this is the best I could do that I could zoom in. Okay, watch her lips. See that? I love you. And that was while her daughter was on the stand. No, it's not, Lil Miss. It's the description of controversial issues, basically. And then this is her being charged. I just want to make sure there's nothing. Okay. Where do I need to sit? I need to sit on this side. No? Like this. Oh. Okay, I need to sit there.
A Marshfield woman visibly shaken, facing murder charges in her husband's death. Moments later, she collapsed and had to be rushed to the hospital by ambulance. WBZ's Paul Burton is live in Marshfield tonight. Paul, we now know that her husband was a Boston firefighter.
Lisa, this is just a sad story all around. Michael Ricci was a Boston firefighter for more than 20 years. Today, his wife is being charged with killing him. No word yet on a motive in this case, and right now we don't have any details because the arraignment never happened.
Christine Ricci, you are charged with murder.
Shaking uncontrollably as she entered the courtroom, 46-year-old Christine Ricci of Marshfield collapses to the ground.
Your Honor, Ms. Ricci is having a medical emergency.
All rise.
Ricci was about to be arraigned at Plymouth District Court, charged with killing her husband, 51-year-old.
Okay, so that is what her daughter was describing as well. So that I'm pretty sure it's a panic attack, because her daughter was saying when she has them, then she shakes and basically collapses like that. If you're just joining and you've missed today's trial, it's a really good one, if I may say so myself. I found myself like really honing in on every single person talking, and the lawyering is really good. Hebe, that's funny. And then I need you to remind me tomorrow that I want to watch. I'm going to share this, and then so I want to watch this. Don't let me forget, please. But for now, the much awaited Sarah Boone that everybody has seen, which is what I said. I literally said, everyone's going to be watching it. Everyone's going to have seen it. Are you sure you want me to watch it? And people were like, yes, you should watch it. And then came and said that it was as good, which is fine. Here's my disclaimer. To me, Sarah Boone is innocent unless proven otherwise. What made me concerned about the whole situation is that she said in that video, now you know what it feels like when you strangle me. Statistically speaking, that's a red flag. I'm not saying that she should go free or whatever. Trial must happen. The legal system must do what the legal system's going to do. I'm just saying I haven't convicted her, and I'm not going to diagnose her with anything, and I'm not going to bash her until I know the story. I know that I'm going to have a lot of opposition on it. Doesn't bother me. I also think that if I had fought this long for someone to represent me in something that I truly believed I had not done wrong, whether that's right or not, doesn't matter. If I had to fight so viciously for someone to fight for me, I would also be going off the rails. I would also be having a hard time cooperating, because she deserves a defense attorney who's going to advocate for her. And she feels she's not getting that. She's not being heard. She's this, she's that. She's going to be a little bit intense. So I wanted to put that disclaimer out there, because I'm not going to bash her. I'm not going to be mean about her. I'm not going to call her names. I'm not going to say that she's crazy. She's this, she's that. I'm not her psychologist. No diagnosis here. She is still innocent in the eyes of the law, and she has had a lot of back and forth with the legal system outside of everything. Whether it was all self-inflicted or not, I can't say. I wasn't there for the conversations. We've only heard her side. We've barely heard any of the lawyer's side. All we know is that they disagree. And maybe they disagree because she wanted to go with the battered woman situation. Maybe she wanted a psychological evaluation. I don't know. Can't speculate. So now that that's out the way, and anyone who is going to hate me for it has raged and left and all of that, let's watch it. Oh yeah, we only have one ear.
Dave Cacciatore on behalf of the state.
Ms. Boone, good morning. Can you please raise your right hand so Madam Clerk can swear you in? Ma'am, good morning. Can you state your name and date of birth for the record for me?
Sarah Boone, 10-10-77.
We also have a representative from Prison Break Investigation. Sir, if you could come forward, please. If you could, sir, raise your right hand. Madam Clerk's going to go ahead and swear you in. Sir, good morning. Could you state your name for the record?
Billy Lane.
And Mr. Lane, what's your affiliation with Prison Break Investigations?
I'm the owner and chief investigator.
Okay, very good. The reason the court had this hearing this morning is the court has found that Ms. Boone has forfeited her right to counsel and waived her right to counsel alternatively by virtue of her conduct in this case. As such, Ms. Boone is currently representing herself. The court has been working diligently to provide you the discovery. I received your letter, ma'am, and I have reviewed it. We have not forgotten about you. It's just taken some time in order to coordinate the appropriate processes with the jail. In conversations with the jail, a laptop has been secured and will be issued to you after USB drives are provided with all the discovery. Upon the jail's receipt of those items, the following provisions will be adhered to. The laptop, charging cable, and USB devices will be kept in the FDC main control room when not in use. At no time will the charging cord be placed in the housing unit. Upon the return of the laptop to the FDC main control, the laptop will be placed on the charging cable to ensure it is available for the next day's usage. The laptop and USB device is to be accounted for with the control room inventory. The control room DST or CO will make logbook entries for the issuing and returning the USB device and laptop. The dorm officer will make logbook entries for the receiving and returning of these items to the applicable movement officer. A notebook entry will be completed in IMS for every issuance of the laptop and USB device to inmate Boone. The laptop and USB device will be available daily to you, Ms. Boone, between 0800 and 1600 hours. A notebook entry will be completed in IMS for every issuance of the laptop and USB device to yourself, Ms. Boone. The discovery was provided at the court previously and is in the two bankers boxes that are in front of the court to your left, Mr. Lane. I'm going to order you, sir, to take possession and custody of that discovery that was provided to the court previously on June 28, 2024. You, through Prison Break Investigations, shall copy all of the discovery onto as many USB dump drives as necessary. The Judicial Administration Commission for the state of Florida shall be responsible for the fees and costs due to Prison Break Investigations for copying all of the discovery onto as many USB jump drives as necessary. You will appear for a hearing with the court on August 1st, 2024 at 8:45 in courtroom 12A of the Orange County Courthouse with the discovery and all USB jump drives containing the discovery. A representative from the Orange County Jail shall also appear for that hearing as well. At that point in time, Prison Break Investigations shall hand deliver all USB jump drives containing the discovery to the representative from the Orange County Jail in order to be placed onto the laptop that is currently secured and to be issued to the defendant for all trial and court preparation. Do you have any questions for me, sir?
I have a conflict for August 1st, Your Honor. I'm
Okay.
going to be out of state from Tuesday until Friday of next week, which I believe will be conference August 1st for my son's wedding.
Okay, well, congratulations. When do you return from your son's wedding, sir?
I will be back late Friday evening, so I'll be available the following week.
Okay, will you be able to complete that task by that time?
Yes, sir. I'll do my best.
Okay, sir, we will see you on give me a second, I want to make sure I get the date right. Monday, August 5 at 8:45. Okay, you'll be given a copy of the order that I just read from. Ms. Boone, you'll also be given a copy of the order. Do you have any questions for me?
I am thoroughly confused. Was a notice ever put online for this or mailed to anyone? I don't even know why Mr. Lane is here. I don't know why I'm here.
Well, ma'am, you are now representing yourself, and previously you had requested to appear at every hearing that was held. As you are now representing yourself, the court cannot have any hearings regarding your case without you being here. I put on the record and explained to you the process that the court has had with communications with the jail. I'm not allowed to look at any of that. I'm not allowed to copy any of that. So in speaking with the jail and understanding that you still have a private investigator that was provided to you through the state that's being compensated by the state, you're still allowed to utilize his services. The protections of the attorney-client privilege are still applicable to him. So he's able to review any of these documents, ensure that they are safely copied without violating any terms of the privileges. Those will then be placed on multiple USB drives and provided to you. Those USB drives will then be uploaded to a computer that has been secured for you at the jail for you to access all of that information.
Okay. My question is, was a notice of hearing posted or mailed to anyone to where apparently the news crews obviously got it? How is it that I do not know anything about this other than my bunk being kicked at 3 o'clock in the morning telling me I have court?
Ma'am, I have no other way to get in touch with you other than setting the hearing, which was set yesterday once I received confirmation from the jail as to the processes for how this would work. And I understand that your case is important and I want to move it as efficiently, as diligently as possible. I know that you've been waiting for this.
Okay, but she does have a point. Surely they could have told her that she had a hearing today if there was enough time for the media to do a FOIA request. FOIA requests aren't quick at all.
This information, and it took some time to confirm the process with the jail. You've advised me that you have very limited space. You have almost no privacy. You have a small drawer where you can keep some personal effects. We could not send all of those boxes with you to the jail, and the jail advised me that they cannot take all those boxes. A process had to be created to make sure, and this is the process.
The process that I was explained after speaking to a couple of sergeants, and I've been waiting for that, and I would much rather prefer a hard copy of these to where I can write on them as opposed to anything that's on a laptop.
I am unable to provide that for you. I have been provided the process has been provided to me by the Orange County Jail. I understand that's your preference, but I can't do anything more than what I've done right now.
I understand. And I have had other information given to me, which is why I've been waiting for the boxes for them. So I don't know, is this something that I need to pursue continuously still for me to be able to receive my hard copies? Because no one tells me anything.
I cannot answer that question because that may call for me providing you legal advice, which I am prohibited from doing.
Okay. Well, because I have no other way of contacting you other than in a letter, and it's AKA worldwide. So am I supposed to go back and speak to the captain and whoever else it is that I might need to speak to in order to receive these?
Again, I cannot answer that question. All I can tell you is that we will have a hearing on August 5, whereby which Prison Break Investigations will provide all of the information on USB drives. Those will be provided to a representative from the Orange County Jail who will place all that information on a laptop for you to use, and that's accessible for your use from 0800 to 1600 every day.
Right. Okay, so I guess I will figure that out, because if I'm up at 2 o'clock in the morning, I can't utilize the laptop, which is another reason why I was looking forward to the hard copies. So my other question is my time prorated for the time that I've been waiting for my discovery?
I'm not sure I understand what that means.
Will I be having additional time added, or will it be extended from the time period of me waiting for my discovery still?
I'm not in a position to answer that question. I don't know what it is that you're asking for.
My pretrial is supposedly set for September 24th, I believe it is. So obviously I will not be prepared And obviously, I do not know what I'm doing, and obviously, I'm still waiting for my discovery. So for that time period that I have been waiting for almost 4 weeks now, will that be added to the time frame in order for me to be properly prepared?
As of right now, the dates are what the dates are, ma'am.
Okay, so I just miss a week, a month.
The dates are what the dates are.
So I also sent you, I believe, 5 motions. Have you received those?
No, ma'am, I have not.
They were mailed last week.
Then I have not received them yet. The last correspondence I got from you, ma'am, was received on July 8th.
5 motions I've mailed. They're probably sitting wherever else it is, considering it takes a day for you all to receive my mail, considering I'm right down the street from you all. So I have those also in order, which may change whatever information or anything that I'm trying to acquire in between now, the month less that I have in order to prepare for my trial. That's in October. So if you could keep an eye out for those also. I don't know who I'm supposed to ask. How did Mr. Lane come into any of this? Like how was
Okay, hear me out. I know everybody already doesn't like her, but hear me out. She isn't a lawyer, so she's got to figure this stuff out. She can only get the laptop between X time and X time. And that laptop isn't even there and available for her yet, but she had a hearing today, which she didn't know about, but there was enough time for media houses to do FOIA requests. Could they not have phoned the jail? Could they not have let her know somehow? Surely. She is representing herself. A lawyer would have to know about a hearing today, right? Then she doesn't get extra time, but letters she sent last week have not even reached the judge yet. How is she supposed to prepare for trial? You can understand why she'd be getting frustrated, because it's so far down the road and there's still so many delays. Now, she put herself in a lot of these situations all by herself, but I can understand why it's like, okay, but seriously, I sent you that letter last week. These motions are essential. How, I need my discovery. This is all blocking me. How did the media have enough time to put in a FOIA request, but nobody would just say, hey, Sarah, you have a hearing tomorrow about X, Y, and Z? A lawyer would be going off to the other lawyer or judge too. Exactly. But when they do it, it's good legal argument. When she does it, Sarah's being sassy. Just planting the seed of like how much bias there is toward her in general.
Mr. Lane has been your investigator in this case, and he was advised to attend this morning's hearing by virtue of being provided the discovery in order to digitize it so that you can have access to it.
the court contacted him?
I did not contact him.
Am I allowed to speak to him directly?
You can?
Mr. Lane, who contacted you in order for you to be here, please?
JA contacted me.
If I'm pro se and my own attorney, shouldn't I be included in all of this so I know what's going on and not a surprise hearing like it is again for the second time?
Ma'am, again, this is why there were benefits to being represented by counsel. The court has already identified in its 16-page order the reasons for why you no longer have those benefits.
Right. Which
It
is
makes things
malformed.
exceptionally more difficult, as I explained to you, in communicating with the court and communicating with the state attorney's office.
Isn't that what a certificate of service is for anything that's filed by anybody in the court?
There
That
was,
should be included in that.
ma'am, there was no certificate of service for setting this for today. This was coordinated by the JA. You were advised as soon as it was set yesterday.
It's just very odd to me that the news knew about it before I did.
Again, I can't speak to that.
And so nonetheless, my constitutional right to counsel is being forfeited on your behalf in the court. So now I don't get appropriate notice in preparation for me to be able to be here and doing what I'm supposed to be doing and act as and perform as?
I've already addressed the reasons, ma'am, for why there was a forfeiture and alternatively a waiver in the 16-page order that you were provided. Again, it's difficult to communicate with you based on where your current housing is. I'm not able to pick up the phone. The judicial assistant's not able to pick up the phone to communicate with you or send you an email to schedule certain things. And it leaves a little bit of the level of further complication.
How is it the news knows before I do?
You keep asking the same question and the answer is going to be the same. I cannot answer that question for you because
You have,
Okay, but you do know it's harder for me.
I would agree with that, yes.
And you do know that you did not ask me any questions in regards to your order. You just read it straight off and never asked me what's what or how many with anything of it.
Ma'am, if you have questions, I can certainly try to answer them. I'm trying to facilitate you getting that information that you're certainly entitled to. And it took time for a process to be created by the Orange County Jail, as they had advised me. They do not have a place to store 2 banker's boxes of information, nor are they in a position to provide you physical copies. This is what I've been advised as the process is. As soon as that process was finalized, I set the hearing. This was finalized yesterday.
No one ever asks me. I've been waiting for the boxes. I really don't know what to say. And because I supposedly have no way to contact you other than a letter, and the same for you, I don't know how the news crews got here before I did. But I don't know going forward, how is it that I'm supposed to be able to communicate with you other than me sitting here in front of you at these, I guess, supposed surprise hearings that I'm going to have every single time that it is that you would like to speak to me? Is that what it's going to be?
Ma'am, I cannot answer that question. All I can tell you is that you can communicate with the court through the avenues that you've been utilizing previously by and through letter writing. As I said, I do not have your letters that you sent last week. They're not in the court file, and they were not in my inbox yesterday. So as soon as
you can continue to communicate through. How am I supposed to communicate with you? I can't answer that. I can't give you legal advice. Did you get my letters? No. I sent them last week. Haven't got them. They're not here. You can continue to communicate with me through letters that you haven't got, that I sent last week, and that you just said you can't tell me because it's legal advice. Like, I can understand the frustration to a certain degree. And I cannot imagine when you are waiting for any kind of access to information about your case. You show up in court, the media is there, the cameras are set up, no one bothered to tell you. You don't even have access to these things. Like, that is just not fair. Whether she is a bit of an a-hole or not, that is not fair.
As I receive them, I will diligently review them. And if we have to set a hearing, you'll be properly noticed for it.
But she wasn't.
You'll be properly noticed for it. Yes, ma'am.
And will there be a proper notice for today?
Notice was performed last night. I've already explained.
Ask the news crews how they got here?
No, ma'am, I'm not going to let you do that. They're not under oath. They're not a party to this action right now.
It's wrong and it's unfair.
You certainly entitled to that opinion.
Am I allowed to ask him a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. Lane, how is it that you and I are supposed to be speaking to one another?
So my suggestion would be, since you're now the attorney and you are pro se, that either you or your honor gives me access to the jail to come visit with you, and I will be happy to do that. It is the policy of the Orange County Jail to have a letter representing from an attorney to allow me to access you. That's the reason for the past previous couple of attorneys I've not had the ability to come out and access you, but that's changed. And I'll be happy to continue to move forward with any investigative actions I can do for your defense, as long as I can get that access.
So you need a letter from me?
Or the judge or the jail, somebody that will allow me access to you. Yes, ma'am.
And I send it to you directly?
Yes, ma'am.
Is this a letter also that you'll be supplying to him?
I don't know that I'm in a position to compel the Orange County Jail to do anything,
But you all are the ones who contacted him.
but I can't tell the jail, let this person come talk to you. If they have a policy where you need to provide the letter, then you need to provide the letter.
So until you have that letter, you and I will not be able to speak with one another?
I will contact the jail myself and find out if there's an extension for pro se, or maybe they can speak to you directly to circumvent the actual letter itself.
Thank you.
Ma'am, do you have any other questions?
I don't think you have enough time. I'm just doing my best, and if you could please keep an eye out for my motions.
I will be on the lookout for them. You said there were 5, correct?
Yes.
I will
If
be
you
on.
could please include me on the certificate of service for whatever hearings that we have that are no longer a surprise for me, please.
Understood. You'll be given a copy of the court's order that I read momentarily, and I will see you both on August 5 at 8:45 in the morning. All right, thank you all very much. Mr. Cacciatore, anything further, sir?
Nothing from the state.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day. Oh, wait, before you leave, that is all going to be yours. Yes, I would, sir, so that you can begin the digitization process. All right, I'll see you on the 5th. Perfect. Thank you, sir. Yes. I'm just.
Okay. Since people are going to be mad at me for everything I've said anyway, I do want to say that if there was ever an example I'd use as trial by media, I think this would be a good one.
Sir, could you just hang out for a second so I can give you a copy of the order? Thank you.
Is it a journo? Oh, it's not you guys in the live. It's people it's people who rewatch that rage at me. I don't mind. I just reply. And I reply with kindness. And then they don't know what to do. I don't know who that was. I'm a little confused. I'm a little confused about that one. So in the rewatch comments, there's like, you talk too much, you do this, you do that. And I'm just like, oh, sorry, thanks. But here's a playlist where I don't. Or like, you're so wrong about this. I'm like, oh, sorry, thanks for educating me. I didn't know. So I just know it's going to cut. People are going to be like, how can you, blah, 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 she killed him. That's fine. But I have had to be painfully objective for more than 10 years. So my brain does not have the ability to not think of the other side in such a crucial way. But I hope that what I've said has you thinking a little bit about how this has played out, because genuinely, as a journalist, it's been problematic how it's been reported. It has been majorly, majorly problematic. And I think the same thing's happening with Koberger. But with Koberger, and I said this in one of my early lives, one of the biggest problems was the gag order, because it leaves reporters and journalists in a position where they essentially can't debunk things. So, for example, there's a gag order. The internet runs wild with all of these theories, and the news can't say, well, that's not true because according to X document or X authority, this is what the facts are, right? That means that everybody can just run wild with theories without it being able to be substantiated. No one can say anything. The defense can't argue their side. The prosecution can't argue their side. Everybody is left not knowing except for speculation, and then speculation can completely run wild. The same thing happened in the UK Nicola Bulley case, where she went missing, and immediately people turned on the husband. It was a witch hunt. Literally, people went to go and try, like, break into houses in the area to find this woman that the husband had killed. Reading into every single second of his body language, police immediately did gag order kind of situation, and turns out she had accidentally drowned. Her husband had a rock solid alibi. There was nothing weird there. In fact, one of the reasons it was under gag order was because Nicola had a drinking problem. And so she was a highly vulnerable person. But that didn't come out until after the husband had been completely butchered by the public. He probably can't even have any kind of normal life anymore. 2 young kids. It was horrible. And a similar thing's happening with both of those. Can you imagine if Brian Koberger is not guilty, how he's going to live his life after this? Can you imagine if Sarah Boone's not guilty, how she's going to live her life after this? It's not good. Oh, thanks, Adam. Considering you have access to the manager level of my channel, I would hope so. Yes, that is the river. She was on a work Zoom call and disappeared. The dog showed up at a campsite. The dog's ball, I think, was found in the river. And she was a strong swimmer, but at first they didn't mention she was a vulnerable person. None of that. It was very much like suburban mom, drops the kids off at school, goes for a walk. She's in a Zoom call. Someone must have taken her. Husband must have done something, and it was none of that. Suburban mom was struggling with addiction. Suburban mom was having a very difficult mental health time. She was needing a lot of help. So the 8 lawyers were trying to get her to do a plea deal of anything less than life. Well, 8 lawyers and nobody has done a psych evaluation. That's odd. 8 lawyers, she still hasn't seen her discovery. She surely should have been able to weigh in on that. 8 lawyers and she doesn't have basic questions answered that the judge also won't answer. Also, yes, they do pay for absolutely everything in jail, because when we were watching Thomas Styrod in Judge Simpson's court the other day, he mentioned that in order to send the judge a letter, he had to pay 50 cents for an envelope. And Judge Simpson was like, what? Cannot tell you how many I have. Or was it $1.50? I can't remember. He has to pay for every envelope. So he asked the judge if there's another way to communicate, and the judge worked with him because you have to pay for every envelope. Sounded like she wanted them to do something unethical. I don't know. I also don't know what it could have been. Like, to maybe lie about what happened. Yep. 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 I don't know. I just cannot. I cannot crucify her or say anything mean about her or be frustrated by her at this stage because I can understand the frustration. Like, if she was any other person sitting in that hearing and basic questions like, how do I communicate with you, weren't getting answered, any other person would lose their minds trying to get that out of the judge. It's such a straightforward question. She is now the lawyer. A lawyer is going to ask how they can communicate. It happens every single day in court. And instead, she's being vilified for asking a very valid question. And also, the answer that she was eventually given was not really a great answer because she's been sending the letters, they've not been received. So understandable that she'd be like, well, how am I supposed to communicate with you? Because I sent 5 motions last week, you haven't even got them. I'm being told it's 24 hours. But they do get to send it to their court clerk. He's telling her to send letters, but he's not receiving the letters. And there's no other way to communicate. I can understand the frustration. Anyway, it's 5 past midnight, so I need to get to bed. And we have gone through so many of the court watching videos that I don't even know if I can leave the playlist going without it being stuff that we've watched already. Because it was like, I think we reached like a 19-hour stream the other day. So I need to wait for a whole bunch of new stuff. We've seen other judges be very patient and kind, answering questions or explaining the trial procedure to pro se defendants without giving legal advice. Judge McBurney, you want to see a lawyer a judge do an amazing job of working with a very, very, very difficult defendant. Judge McBurney, the Airbnb trial, Pritchett and Robinson. I will see if I can find the very argument I'm playing in my head, but absolutely phenomenal. He explained it well. He was tough. He was fair, and he didn't treat the pro se, previously a soft sit, as if he was a burden. It doesn't take 24 hours to go down the street, has to go through the post office. But then they mustn't tell her it's going to take 24 hours, right? Like, it's just be honest with her. Yeah, tomorrow we will be back with the stabbed in the heart. What a good trial. What a good trial. Is it Karan or Karen? Which way? I had to learn what is not objective. So basically, if you look at a story, you have to take any of the feelings that are in there out. So you only look at the facts, which is 5 whiskeys in the hotel. Who, what, why, where, when, and how. And even in that, the why, you have to either have both sides or none. And there's always got to be both sides before you can get to the bottom line. Yeah, I would love to know what the unethical thing is. I would love to know. And I would also love to know who said that. Because it may not be that it was unethical. It may just be that somebody looking for a good headline decided that that's what it was. Oh, I love him. I wish he would allow me to watch his court. She was good. She was a lot more intense, but I could understand why. What time? Okay, so it's 10 past midnight. And there it's 10 past 6. They start at 8:30 New York time. So I have no idea what time that is for me. 8:30 a.m. So back 8 hours for me. I think about midday for me. I seriously can't. I can't time zone at all. Yeah, I need to know. I need to know what she was actually told. Are we at the same time in the morning? Not for this one, but I might, if the day is going well and I'm getting into focus, I might be able to put some. Oh, sorry, it's because I can see. It's because I'm in StreamYard. It doesn't delete the comments, which is why I always pull Adam's deleted ones up. I might do some court watching beforehand. Yes, but this journalist brain had to be like refined over time. I might be able to give you a better answer in like the earlier hours of the day. That was a very like end of day one. 2:30 p.m. Yes, I do 24-hour clock. And that's from radio. Because we would say like, oh, I'm on at 23 to or like we go to the minutes. There was no morning. Obviously at 3 a.m. your time. Thanks. Okay, 2:30 p.m. is, let me just write it on paper because then my brain will capture it. So then we can probably do some court watching from an hour before that. Okay, friends, thank you for hanging out. I don't know if I have anyone to redirect you to because I think everyone is done for the day. Oh, I can redirect you to Brandy. Lawyer You Know is also coming up. Oh, Brandy's doing Ashley Benefield. I think everyone is Ashley Benefield out right now. Okay. Is it, so just before you go, is it Karan or Karen? Because I don't want to say it wrong. Yeah, 24 hours makes sense for me too. Because that's also what my phone says. My phone says 0012. Thanks, Steve. That was a good surprise. That's a good trial. I'm so looking forward to tomorrow. I do kind of wish that we weren't watching live because I want to skip ahead. Central USA, which is, so it's 5:13 p.m. now because I got a clock. Okay. Cool, Karen. Got you. All right. I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.